Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Scroll podcast brought to you by the Adventure Archive. My name is Ryan.
And I am Hunter.
Today, we are going to be talking about Best Left Buried from Soul Muppet Publishing. The fantasy horror game where the monsters are scary and the players are scared. You are crypt diggers. Try not to die, really.
Yeah.
And what I have is the Best Left Buried Deeper book, where it's a combined version of the 3 core books. This is a dope book. I love how clean the front is. Look at that.
I always love a minimal front of a book, yeah.
Seriously. And even just Best Left Buried on the side, a little bit on the back. It's really nice. I wish the book had a ribbon since it's such a big book. But still gorgeous. And as some people know or not, Soul Muppet Publishing did Orbital Blues, which is a game we talked about on the podcast, and yeah, we fucking love that. I think it's one of the higher rated games. Seriously, it's so good. And Orbital Blues is actually based on Best Left Buried as far as the mechanics and rule set go. So some of it's going to seem familiar, some of it's going to be a little bit different because they do tweak it for Orbital Blues. There's some really cool stuff in this. And Soul Muppet Publishing recently came to Exalted Funeral. I am rocking some new Exalted Funeral swag. I know you people out there in podcast land can't see me showing this off, but
it's a cool shirt, people who are listening.
Yeah, this dope brazier Exalted Funeral long sleeve shirt. It's pretty dope. They had a 20% off sale, so I bought every shirt they had.
I think it's actually pronounced brazier. So.
Yeah, it's a brazier for sure. Yeah. But I had previously had the 3 core books in digital, and then as soon as I saw Best Left Buried on Exalted Funeral, not only did I get the Best Left Buried, and again for podcast land, because we forget that, the book for Best Left Buried Deeper is all black, and then on the front is an image that is used in the logo. It is a shovel stuck into the ground, so it's just an all black cover, and then there's a white shovel stuck into some dirt, and that's all that's on the front cover. It's gorgeous. But of course I also had to get all of these, which again for the people in podcast land, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 8 more zines, which is all of the adventures for Best Left Buried, and then 3 additional zines of heroic adventures, ancestries, and consequences that expand on Best Left Buried. So, big fan of this game. I really love it. It's really dark and fucked up, which is super, super cool.
It reads really well too. It reads like it's fun to play. So
yeah. I this is one I really, really want to play really, really bad. So anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about today. I think we're a little far in to be so how you doing this morning, Hunter? But there it is. I just did it.
Good. How are you?
I'm tired. I'm a tired boy.
Yeah, I'm tired too. So
yeah. Woo, the Sleepy Boy podcast this morning for all you people out there.
Yeah, we're the sleepiest boys in podcast land.
Yeah, and speaking of the podcast, our YouTube recently broke 300 subscribers, and then just kept shooting up. We're at 320 now. I think we've had 80 plus new subscribers in the past 30 days. So thank you all so much for that. And if you're listening to this, you should definitely go subscribe to our YouTube. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it's cool for us because analytics are nice. And Jason told me that at 500 subs, we get to do more fun stuff on the YouTube, which I have no idea about because he controls it and does a great job. But anyway, if you're listening to this, do us a solid. First of all, thank you, because the podcast has really been blowing up lately too, and we really, really appreciate that.
Love y'all.
Cyborg was a very, very popular episode. Yeah. But head over to YouTube. Just search The Adventure Archive. We're right there. Just hit that sub button, and that would really help us out a ton, and we'd really appreciate it. But that's our intro, and we're gonna have a very kind of quick Kickstart the Podcast episode this week.
Yeah.
And just get into the game. So
we
yeah,
can go take a nap.
you can take naps. Absolutely.
Well,
I can
it's not
sleep.
a nap for you. For you, it's
actual sleep. Yeah. So kicking it off, I'm going to talk about a game called as I kickstart the podcast, even our crowdfunding segment. I'm going to talk about Nolan Locke's Exquisite Corpse. It is a grimdark, system agnostic campaign guidebook rendered by a mad cartographer. This one looks really, really neat. It's already funded. It funded in 12 hours. It's got 24 days left on it. But it is a tool for RPG story design. Basically, it is a whole book of stuff to use to build a grimdark fantasy setting. It says here that Nolan Locke's Exquisite Corpse is a fully illustrated book that introduces you to RPG story design. You'll explore story design components and elements that you can combine in any order to craft an exciting and unique game for your players. You can use this book regardless of what game you play. It's about the story, not the rules. And apparently the main character in it is, I think it's kind of written the way that like, you know how D&D does like Volo's Guide to Monsters or whatever. Right. And like, so this is the Mad Mariner Nolan Locke, who guides you through this book and his flooded world known as Weirroads. What he remembers is often clouded. You'll get to decide which of his stories are true, and you'll get to build your own version of Weirroads and a fully developed story within this grimdark world. So it looks really, really neat. Basically, it's got it's 250 plus pages. It's got a bunch of ship battle maps, because again, this is kind of water themed. It's got 30 interconnected characters with illustrations and backgrounds. 30, they're like 3s and 30s in this lot. 30 unique items with illustrations and lore. 30 monsters with illustrations and lore. 3 unique cities. 3 unique environments. And tons of roll tables for world building. So this is a really interesting concept for a book that I can't really think of one that I've seen done like this before, where it's like, this is the whole book that we're basically going to give you all the tools you need to build your own grimdark setting, kind of, but with a basis in this one that we've created a bit. And you can just take it with your own direction. I can't think of a project that did it like this.
I think there was something during Zemo. I can't remember if we packed it or backed it or whatever, but I think that there was something like this during Zemo. Can't remember what it was. And I'm not going to go through the whole Zemo site right now, even though it's still up, so you could if you wanted to.
Yeah. But regardless, even if we've seen something similar to this before, this looks like a really cool concept. I really love the idea of, it's not like Microscope where you build from scratch with some mechanics. Right. It's not a campaign setting that's fully fleshed out. It's stuff for you to build your own. And it seems like there's a ton of stuff, and it looks really, really neat. The art is gorgeous. There's a whole slideshow here of character art that looks really, really neat. Cool. Yeah. And the book itself, I looked on their Instagram page, especially the gilded, there's a limited edition signed copy, and it's got like gold foiling and stuff on it. Noir black and gold pages. It looks really, really beautiful.
It does look really pretty. I very much like this, like, it's really kind of grayscale and like almost like watercolor grayscale, where it's got like kind of splotchier. I don't know. I really am into it. So I backed it.
It's at 50. It's almost at $5,500. And then there are some stretch goals to it. At $10,000, you unlock the limited edition one that I just talked about, signed and everything. At 15, you get to add more characters. And then there's a number of other ones at 20, 25, and 50. And the project itself, if you want just the digital of everything, it's $25. If you want is there just the physical that's not the international one? Am I just making that up? Everything you need to print your own and play digitally. We want to share Nolan Locke's Exquisite Corpse with the world. Our world map is too large to ship internationally at a reasonable cost. I think this is in dollar bills. So is this an American-based project? Yeah, Portland, Oregon. Okay, so we're not international shipping. But you can also get a $55 package, which is the Captain package. You get your name in the book. You get the PDF of everything. You get the book, and you get the world map. So, and that's $55.
Plus
so the map's really big. What's up?
Plus 15 for shipping.
15 for shipping in the US?
15 for US shipping.
That is kind of an expensive project for a book and a map. I mean, a lot of PDF stuff, but it's a 250-page book. Again, it looks neat. We'll see how it goes. I think you back this. I think this is a really neat project. I'll probably end up backing in the next 24 days, but there's 24 days left. But it looks really neat. So yeah, so that is Nolan Locke's Exquisite Corpse. And then you have, I think it's just a small project to go over today, right?
Yeah. I'm really going to touch on a very small indie project. So Blade Runner. So listen, we like to go over small projects, and we like to go over Kickstarters. This is more of, we're going to touch on this just in case it's more news. This is news. If you haven't heard, Free League, that we love and then we all love, has a Blade Runner TTRPG up on Kickstarter right now. It has 19 days left to go. It does not need your help with funding. It is 12,000% funded. But if you are a fan of Free League, if you are a fan of Blade Runner, if you are a fan of the system they use, which is the Year Zero engine, I believe, which is the same one you said they use in Alien and what's the other one?
I think Basin uses it. I think I might be wrong that Coriolis and Twilight use it too. Twilight 2000. But
it's an investigatory tabletop game, which makes a lot of sense if you've read The Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, or if you've watched either of the Blade Runner movies. If you are into dystopian neon worlds where it's always raining, this is the game for you. If you don't know what Blade Runner is, you should watch Blade Runner. It's they're both really good. There are several different levels of funding, for what did I end up doing actually? I did not do the cheapest one because I'm me, and that sounds like a thing I would do. For $30 or 298 SEK, you can get the core book PDF, and then the starter set PDF, and then all digital stretch goals. You can back a little bit higher for the physical. I believe I backed it at like $51, and it got me all the physical stuff. But yeah. Obviously, this project does not need a big plug, so we're not going to spend much time on it, and it's a fairly famous IP, so if you haven't heard of Blade Runner, I'm sure you're not alone. Other people haven't, but a lot of people have. So, that's my Kickstart the Podcast.
I definitely backed the Off-World bundle for that sweet special edition book. I was even talking to Jason about this, and I was like, hey, listen, it's Free League. As soon as the PDF comes out, a pre-order is going to come out. I don't need to spend the money right now unless there's a Kickstarter exclusive cover. I'm just going to wait on this one. Lo and behold, Kickstarter exclusive cover. So I snagged it, but it was surprisingly affordable. $134 for the core rulebook, limited edition hardback book, which has been expanded a shitload by the stretch goals, and the full starter set in print and PDF. And I think it might come with a Foundry module too. We're not going to dig into it, but I mean, I was expecting to spend
at the Megacorp level, so
Oh, so you could get like the 5 of everything. Yeah.
I got one for all my friends.
There you go. But anyway, like he said, this is more news than anything. If you want to dig through the Kickstarter page, go for it. You can add on just about everything that you want to add on to, which is a good deal for shipping and stuff for that. So I highly recommend Symbaroom, Alien, Forbidden Lands. The One Ring just came out too. So it's a good idea. It's a good time. Every time Free League drops something, it's a good time to grab some stuff that you haven't got already. But anyway, like he said, it's $1.2 million backed. So again, this is news more than a plug. But yeah, that's that. And then my last one for today is called Airlock. random rolled resources for wardens and players. So this is a really interesting kind of project for Mothership, which, as we all know, it should be coming out in the next couple of months. There was a huge batch of Mothership stuff during Zemo, and I know the quote-unquote actual official quote-unquote like Zine Quest is coming soon too. So we'll see if another big batch of stuff drops for that on Kickstarter. But this project is Zine props, patch, and more for the Mothership RPG. It seems to be more than anything a batch of stuff. You know, there's not really, unless I completely, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it's not like an adventure or things like that. It is stuff that you can use. So the zine is 32 pages. It's got 17 pages of random charts and tables. It's got a colony generator with 25 tile icons that can be printed and arranged to create a colony, which is really cool. 4 full color access ID cards that can be cut out or photocopied and used as props. And 1 orbital customs and territorial protection AI declaration form that can be cut out and photocopied. So, like I said, it's stuff. It's got patches. There's this cool dial-a-weapon thing, where it's literally like a dial you can roll up. The data pad looks really neat. The customs forms looks cool. The patch is neat. It's like an astronaut in the middle and it says space is hard, try not to die on the outside. The customs form is cool. The ID cards actually look really, really neat. The multicolor plastic props. And there is a brochure. Oh, there is a trifold brochure with 3 small adventures on it too. So like I said, it's a bunch of stuff and it's relatively inexpensive. So for the PDFs of the Airlock Zine and Triple Threat, which is the adventure pamphlet, it's only $12. For the Airlock Zine and Triple Threat, and that's for the PDFs. For the print, it's only $15 plus shipping, which is crazy. And the all-in for the zine, print, and PDF, everything I'm saying here is going to be print too. The patch, the data pad, the dial-a-weapon, the customs forms, ID cards, and the pamphlet, print and PDF is only $25. It's a lot of stuff for a relatively inexpensive amount of moolah. Yeah. And it looks really, really nice too. So I love physical copies, physical things to pass out at the table. It helps so much with the immersion and really gives that kind of like, oh, wow, this is cool moment that you really hope for at the table where like people are going to remember. It's just like, oh, like we started the adventure and you actually passed out ID cards and access cards to the areas. Like that's the kind of stuff that you can remember. So anytime that you can get really nice physical props, I think that's a really cool idea. This is by James Floyd Kelly. So yeah, so cool project. Again,
cool. That was really cool. You know,
it looks really neat, right? Like it was unexpected.
I love tools and roll tables and little and like the physical stuff you can use at the table. I will 100% pay $25 to just have something to add on to a game I'm already running, to increase the like immersion or just like how much they're enjoying the moment, you know?
Exactly. So this is really neat one. I definitely back this at the 25. We're both kind of trying to like not necessarily back a ton of projects anymore, especially because we're broke boys now.
We went overboard. Last year we really went overboard. So
with the Zemo?
Well, I guess this year too, but yeah. I mean, last year I spent like $1,000 in like 2.5 months. So, you know.
Yeah, I stopped counting pretty quickly when I hit 1,000 after like 6 projects. So like, and I'm back to like almost 200.
I have a spreadsheet.
I can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
No,
but a lot of the projects, like I said, we're still going to go over them and we're still going to push the projects. We're probably just not going to buy as many right off the bat. And some of the bigger projects, especially like I was saying with Blade Runner, where aside from the fact that there's a Kickstarter exclusive cover, if we know that they're going to come out later to buy, there's a good chance that I'm not going to back a lot of stuff right off the bat, and I'll just wait till I actually am going to play the game so that I don't end up with like a whole nother bookshelf of games that I've never played just because they were cool, as I gesture to my bookshelf. But something like this, like that you can actually physically use pretty quickly, especially when other ship drops. Like this is something that I'll drop in a heartbeat. And like Albion Tales that we talked about last week, Three little zines, like doesn't take up a lot of space, relatively inexpensive, a really cool project, really good leyline press is great. So yeah, so this is something that we can use right off the bat, and I'm gonna stop rambling on about it. That is our Kickstart the Podcast.
There we go. We brought it home, y'all.
Yeah, that's Kickstart the Podcast for today. Short and sweet. Two projects to talk about, and Blade Runner, which is basically just news. All cool. All go check those out. But now we are gonna get into Best Left Buried. I'm very excited for this. I'm very excited for this one. It's let me bring it up. Game read through. Boom. Best Left Buried. So as you can see, if you're watching, the Best Left Buried logo, the I in Buried, is that shovel logo, which is on the front of the Best Left Buried Deeper book, which is the 3 core books all put together. And the cover art for this is really neat. It is a what looks to be a knight, kind of basically like armored helmet, bloody sword, holding a torch, with what appears to be, I'm gonna say probably a woman with is it a bandolier? Is that what it's called? Yeah, a bandolier and a gun, going through a crypt or a dungeon. Looks neat. And this is the so again, there are 3 core books. The one we're going to go over today is the Crypt Digger's Guide to Survival. It is basically the player's guide, in the context of the 3 core books that I'm talking about. And this again is from Soul Muppet Publishing, written by Zachary Cox, who is Jelly Muppet on Twitter, and Nicholas Spence, who is Nick Spencer on Twitter. Nick Spence 1 on Twitter. Great project. Really excited for it. Right here at the beginning, no, it doesn't say it at the beginning of this one, but there are 3 books, as I've said numerous times now. There is the Crypt Digger's Guide to Survival. There is the Doomsayer's Guide to, oh gosh, why am I blanking on this? I'm going to pull out the other book because it says in the beginning. Does it not? Does it not?
There's 3 books. There's the Monster
Crypt Digger's Guide to Survival. Crypt Digger's Guide to Survival, Doomsayer's Guide to Horror, because in this book, adventurers are called Crypt Diggers, and the GM is called the Doomsayer. And then there's the Hunter's Guide to Monsters.
It's my guide to monsters.
Got your own book. So those are the 3 core books within it. And that is what it is. Basically, as he said, Player's Handbook, DM's Guide, and Monster Manual, if we want to compare it to that game. And then, yeah. So right off the bat, there is kind of an intro. It says, welcome to Best Left Buried, a rules-light fantasy horror RPG, combining the old school spirit with new procedures and mechanics for a grueling but thrilling dungeon crawl experience. There is a setting in Best Left Buried. It's not really talked about hardly at all within this book, but in the adventures and stuff, it is there. It is the 13 Duchies of Lindal, a Renaissance world dominated by powerful colonialist institutions and ruled by the Wizard of White Tower, a powerful lich. And tools are included to run Best Left Buried in Lindal, but with any fantasy setting featuring large dungeons and an adventuring class. So again, the referee is a Doomsayer, the adventurers are the Crypt Diggers, and we are getting into it. So right off the bat, at least in the copy that I have.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. There is a table of contents, number of chapters, intro, getting started, making character, archetypes, equipment, advancements, playing the game, consequences, and monsters. And it is not hyperlinked, which is disappointing.
Also not bookmarked.
Are there no bookmarks in it either?
No.
No.
Womp womp womp.
Womp womp womp. Yeah. And again, in the bigger book, I could have just kept scrolling, and then I literally rolled onto a page that has the 3 primary books in it. Yeah. Yep. Could have just kept going. Listen, we're tired boys again this morning. That's what I said. I already said that. I warned you. And here we are. So yeah. So continuing to scroll, we have the introduction. It basically says what a lot of the books say, especially some of the darker shit that we look at. Best Left Buried has mature themes, including content warnings for violence, mental illness, death, injury, trauma, ableism, mutilation, body horror, cannibalism, blood addiction, and drug use. You sold me already. That's all. I was like, yep, there we go. But it does take a particular kind of like warning on afflictions, because there is a lot of mechanics for psychological afflictions, which can mirror mental illness in the quote unquote real world. So it basically says if you are not comfortable with that, there are ways that you can take it out. And regardless, there are safety tools that are recommended to be used, like X-Card and Lines and Veils and all the rest of the stuff we've talked about before. This is definitely a game to at least to touch on with your players about, hey, like, there's a lot of fucked up shit in this. So if you're not cool with alcoholism or cannibalism or something like that, let's make sure that we talk about that as we go through the book, you know, especially as we read through advancements and things like that, and make sure that everyone's on the same page.
It is nice because I think they have a whole other system that is not called afflictions that you can switch it out for. I can't remember what it's called. I don't know if it says right here, but it is nice they give that option. I think we always talk about how important it is to touch base with your table and make sure that like you're all within the space that you can have a good time in. I think Ryan and I both have tables where if I brought up this, they'd be like, yeah, cannibalism sounds hilarious. But not every table is like that. And it's fair to let people have the space that they need.
Exactly.
Although cannibalism is hilarious.
I mean, I would listen, if we were in game, I would eat the fuck out of you, dude. Like, throwing it out there. I hope you would do the same to me.
I would, you know.
If you're a hungry boy and I'm not using it anymore. Nom nom, you know what I'm saying? So concepts and tools. Basically, this is talking about the super basic.
Super basic.
I'll preface this in the beginning here a little bit. I love, and we talked about this a bunch, where rules or character creation, which do you do first in a book? I mean, you're going to read the whole thing, so why does it matter? But it does. What I love about this book is it touches on the mechanics a little bit, goes into character creation, and then goes back in depth into the rules, which I think is the perfect way to do a book. Yeah. But right here in the very beginning, it basically says the only things you need are D6s. I think the most D6s you're ever going to roll at one time is 4. If you're doing an attack with the upper hand.
Right.
But there are ways that if it says D2 or D3, if you have to roll a D2 or D3, you can still roll a D6. And then if the D2, it's just 1 through 3 is 1, 4 through 6 is 2, and on a D3, you know, 1 is 1 and 2, 2 is 3 and 4, 3 is 5 and 6. That's just, you just chop it up. That's how it works. But long story short, all you're going to generally roll is D6s for every check, for all of your saves, for everything mechanic in the game. All you need is a couple of D6s, and a coin, because you get to flip a coin to see if you die when you die.
And that's hilarious.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
But technically, you could also just roll a D6 and just have like 1 through 3 and 4 through 6 too.
I want the suspense of a coin toss, though. You know,
that is true. That is very true. Piece of art here. One thing we did notice, this is a cool piece right here in the beginning of a person with, I believe they're probably doing some type of magic. They are robed. They have a cool staff. There is light within this black and white art. One thing we did notice, the book is a little bit art light.
Yeah, I mean, there's not. This is not a super art heavy book, which is not necessarily like, you know, a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, but you know, we're art boys.
We are little artsy boys. So
when we do talk about art as like a scoring, like we consider, like, I mean, Merkborgs are 10. You know, it's literally like an art punk book. You know,
yeah.
So you know, 5 is average, which is fine, and we'll see what happens later. So getting started, I do like the beginning of each section. There is like a story of the party. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll read the beginning part of this, and then we'll just kind of skip over the ones later. But it's a cool story to read through as you read the whole book. So buy the book and read it. The party met in the guild hall. Starting early with that. The party met in the guild hall of the Blue Moon in the grand city of Falf. Albert Dulac, bastard of Dentwine, peerless warrior of Hammer and Helm, Osford of the Nine Fingers, acolyte of the Blue Order and mutant of the priesthood. Lillian the White, conjurer of tricks and keeper of great secrets. Karis Fingers Delton, a gutter scum thief schooled in the subtle art of knife work and treachery. All gathered for their own reasons. Family betrayal, penance, occult thirsts, the promise of forgotten gold. The guildmaster didn't care.
Wait, sorry, Karis did what to Delton?
Right? They did not tremble, for each thought themselves sterner than steel. They did not pause or delay as they agreed to the terms and asked for the crypt's location. She almost pitied them. She had seen so many before. She hoped they found what they sought, but didn't reckon much on it. So I really like this beginning part. Later in character creation, they do have an emphasis on like picking a name, and these names in the beginning are so like, fuck, like, okay, I totally get who this guy is just from this. Within the lore of the game, you work in basically kind of like a crypt digger guild kind of, or camp. And you're just kind of sent off to go do it. You could totally run this game as West Marches style. You absolutely could just like drop in. And it also later even recommends having multiple characters, because the whole thing is basically a giant funnel, because you're gonna fucking die.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I think this is really good for that, like kind of join and drop like very freely. Yeah. You know, super easy, because the character creation is so quick. We'll get to it in a second. That you could make a character in like 5 minutes. Yeah. Realistically, super easy. So if someone just like shows up, you're like, cool. All right, we're going to this crypt today. Still intro in the book. Basically, it said this is a role playing game. Crypt Diggers are the adventurers. Doomsayer is the DM or the GM, so they play all the NPCs and monsters. This is a not a player facing roles. Monsters and NPCs do have turns, so the DM, the Doomsayer, does do all of that. How to use the book: if you're a player, read it, make a character, play the game. If you're the Doomsayer, they recommend you read the Doomsayer's Guide to Horror. And then the process of play is pretty quick. The Doomsayer describes a situation. The Crypt Digger describes how they interact. The Doomsayer decides if or what mechanics resolve the interaction, whether that's a stat check, observation check, grip check, or combat. And if necessary, dice are rolled, and the Doomsayer narrates the action, narrates the action's outcomes, explaining how the situation changed. Rinse and repeat. That's it. And much like most TTRPGs. Yeah, literally, that's it. What do you want to do? I'll tell you what you have to do to do it. You do it, and I'll tell you whether you pass or fail and what the consequences are. It's literally a tabletop game. Quick, again, a rule summary right in the beginning. I fucking love this. I love a quick breakdown of the rules before you get into character creation, because then you kind of understand what you're doing when you're making characters. So, rule summary. There are stats in this tabletop role-playing game. 3, again, just like Orbital Blues, because Orbital Blues is based on this. You got Brawn, Wit, and Will. Higher is better. The player selects an archetype, determining their character's pre-crypt digging experiences, an advancement, determining their crypt digger skills and some equipment and weapons. And through play, you'll gain experience. When you have 8 experience, it resets to 0, and you gain a new advancement, and you add 1 vigor and grip to your pools. When you get talked about advancements. Advancements are my favorite part of all of this. Like,
yeah, it's so good.
Your characters can get real something, you know?
Yeah, real interesting. Stat checks. Basically, anytime you attempt something difficult or risky, you could do a stat check of Brawn, Wit, or Will to determine the outcome. So the base mechanic, and we could make a whole fucking page of different ways that 2d6 mechanics can be rolled, whether it's kind of PBTA style or Necronautilus style, or whatever. But the way that the base mechanic in this game works for stats, combat rolls, kind of combat rolls, is you roll 2d6 plus stat, and it's not a mixed success system. It's 9 plus is a success, and anything less is a fail. Just like Orbital Blues was, which is really interesting. So when you're at lower levels, statistically, it's not good that you're going to pass, right? At higher levels, it's a lot better. But I mean, we know the bell curve on a 2d6 is 6 to 8. because and a lot of games use 7 to 9 because they assume you have at least a +1, but the bell curve itself is 6 to 8. So if you hit that and you have a stat of 1, you might get it. If you have a +2, it's more likely. If you have a +3, almost guaranteed. You know, I think I did the math before, and on 2d6 with a +3, you have like a 75% chance of a success. So I guess that's a 7 or whatever. But anyway, that's the basics of stat checks in the game, and we'll dig around that a little bit later because again, this is just a quick primer. There are basically their version of advantage and disadvantage are called upper hand and against the odds, and you just roll 3d6 instead and just drop the highest or lowest, whether for good or bad. So on upper hand you drop the lowest, and on against the odds you drop the highest. And you can also use exertion, where you spin grip, which we'll get into, to push player beyond their limits. And then there's also observation checks, which are basically just generalized investigation perception checks for anything that's not easily recognizable right off the bat. So basically, you don't need to make a check. So you don't need to make a check for everything. You only make a check if there are consequences potentially to the action. Or if it's beyond just what you would normally see. So if you walk into a room, anything that you can see.
Yeah, they don't need to make an observation check to see the big building in front of them. They can see the big building in front of them.
Right. And if you are exploring a desk, you don't need to make a check to rifle through the papers. Maybe you need to make a check to find like the hidden compartment underneath or something like that. But there's no reason to do perception, investigation, whatever checks if you're actively looking at the thing that you want to be looking at, right? And basically your observation check is a way to discern extra details beyond like the basics of your environment around you. Yeah. And it's the same thing. 2d6, 9 plus is a success, otherwise a fail.
And just to back Ryan up, because I just did the math, it's like a 70. If you have a +3, it is like a 72% chance to succeed. Which you're like, oh, at that point, it's just like, although I will say like +3 is a pretty high stat in this game, especially if your character is going to die. So and plus, I mean, and that's only in one stat because I think you start. We'll get to the starting stats, but you definitely don't start close to +3. Yeah.
Do you want to hit the spin here?
So, rule summary. So we have vigor and grip. So vigor is going to be essentially your health points, and grip is going to be your it's like mental health points actually. Grip is like sanity, stamina, and mana.
It's your grip on reality.
Yeah, it's your grip on reality. Vigor is obviously lost by physical damage to things that would hurt you physically, and grip is lost through exertion and failing grip checks. So you want to have a gorilla grip on reality. Yeah, listen, that thing ain't gripping, bro. You're gonna fail your check. God damn it, Ryan. You can also lose grip through some advancements, and you can regain it by accepting consequences like injuries or afflictions or whatever the afflictions sub mechanic is. But for a grip check, you're going to roll 2d6 plus your will. Success is going to be a 9 plus, like everything else is 2d6 in this game. You will gain, and on that success roll, you will gain 1 experience. Otherwise, you're going to fail. You're going to lose 1 grip. And then grip checks may be made with upper hand or against the odds, which is kind of I don't think we've gone over it yet, but it is the advantage, disadvantage in this game.
I literally just went over it.
We did? Oh yeah, we did just go over it. Yeah, well, there we go. Listen, I'm still waking up. You're all doing so good. So they can be made upper hand or against the odds. For death and consequences, when a crypt digger is reduced to 0, vigor, you get to flip a coin, and this is my favorite part. I don't know why. On heads, they die, which is hilarious. And then on tails, they're wounded and unconscious, making them vulnerable to be finished off, essentially, unless your ally comes and rescues you with a heroic rescue. If a crypt digger is reduced to 0 grip, it's removed from the player's control, which is another fun little consequence of this. Crypt digger can regain grip by accepting a consequence When hurt or suffering damage, they can accept an injury, risking death or dismemberment to reset their grip to 5. Alternatively, you can reset your grip to 10 by accepting an affliction, accepting a potentially debilitating medical or mental condition. So yeah, you can 10 back, but you might go a little crazy. You might become a cannibal. Yeah. So you have your mental HP essentially, and you have your physical HP.
So basically, yeah, you got like what amounts to 5 stats, 3 core stats you actually do checks on, and 2, like you just said, your mental and physical HP, which is really neat.
So inventory slots, this feels like a lot of inventory slots.
Feels like a lot.
It feels like a lot. So for inventory slots, you have 12 plus your will or wit, whichever is higher, plus 2 times your brawn stat. Each carried item fills a slot equal to the number of hands required to hold them. I think that was the same in Orbital Blues, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like that. Yeah, two-handed things takes 2 slots, right? Very easy to remember, but it just feels like a lot of fucking inventory slots, man. Yeah. Characters carrying more slots are against the odds on all brawn checks and any stat checks requiring quick movement. So pretty much if you were over encumbered, it's going to be harder for you to physically move within the world, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
For rounds in combat, during combat, time is divided into rounds and turns, much like every other game we've ever gone over.
Exactly.
And keeping with tradition, each is it 10-second round? Yeah. So each round is 10 seconds. Each combatant takes a 10-second turn. And on their turn, a crypt digger can move a short distance, take one other action, like making attack, using an advancement, moving additional distance, or another quick action. So you can move like a reasonable distance. Usually I think Ryan and I say across a regular size room. That's
well, that's what Merkborg says. There's actually zones in this that.
But yeah, so you can move and either move again or take a various action of attacking, using something quickly or using one of your advancements. For attack and defense, characters using a weapon, essentially you're going to roll 3d6 and you're going to add the relevant stat, whether it be brawn or wit, based on your weapon. From the 3d6, you're going to take the sum of any 2 dice that exceed the target's armor. The remaining 3rd dice is going to deal your damage. Did I miss anything about that?
No, that's about it. Yeah, and we'll dig into it a little bit more later too.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. It's a 3 dice, 2 added together to beat the armor, the last one to do damage, and then add it to your 2 hit. Essentially, add to your brawn and wit based on whatever weapon you are using. Like it says on here, it's gonna be very obvious for those who played tabletop games. Attacks can have upper hand or be against the odds, which would make sense. It'd be really weird if they couldn't.
And then if your damage dice is a 6, you get to inflict an injury.
That's what I missed. Yeah, that's what I missed. Okay. I was like, there's one thing
which is cool. Yeah. Because it's strategic. I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of mathy in that when you roll 3 dice, say you just have to get a 9 and you get to pick the 2 that get to 9, because if you can get over 9 with, basically any of the 3, you definitely want to pick the lowest dice roll that you can plus your stat, so that your highest dice roll is your damage. It's not not specific. It's great.
It's a much more active way to think about combat than like, I rolled. Okay, I hit. I roll my damage dice. Okay. It's like, okay, cool. I rolled all these dice. And then, exactly that thought process. Like, okay, cool. If I add these 2 together, I can hit, and that still leaves me this much damage. Yeah, I think it's a much more active way to do combat. I very much like this rule. And I feel like War Plans had something that was like a very similar, like you rolled 3 dice.
I think it was similar, but it was written in such a convoluted way that I couldn't even understand.
Clean. This is so clean, so straightforward.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of a slightly more advanced Maze Rats, because unless I'm completely mistaken, Maze Rats rolls 2d6, and anything over the armor class is just damage. So if you roll 2d6 and get an 8 and the armor is 4, you do 4 damage. That's it. It's just your overage. And this feels like just one more die to do basically the same thing, which I really like. It is clean.
Yeah.
Another giant full-page piece of art here of like a 3-headed monster with people battling it in the background of people playing a role-playing game.
Yeah, he's telling a story.
Which is cool. Telling a story. So making a character. So again, there is the continued story of Albert Dulac and the rest of those homies. Here, I'm not going to read every one. You know what you can do?
I just want to point out that Dulac is the name of the city from Shrek.
Yeah.
And every time you say that, I'm like, welcome to Dulac, such a perfect. All right, sorry, keep going.
There's our copyright strike. So yeah, so again, the story continues. There's art actually in the background of this too. It's like the beginning of the crypt, which is cool. It's just very gray. So you might not notice it right off the bat, but it is the character art in the background.
I did not notice right off the bat, so.
Oh yeah, well there you go. Yeah, on the headers of each one, it's a gray page and it's got some art in the background that continues the story. So making a character, we're getting into names and inspiration. Basically what this says is use the names as springboard to decide how your character looks, talks, and behaves. There's a very big difference between Aramis de Beauregard versus like Kyra Daggart. So you should use your character's name as a beginning of what you want your character to be like. Basically, if you pick, I can't remember the name of the class, it's like a charlatan. You're probably going to have like a long kind of fancy sounding name because you're a criminal and a liar and you want to sound fancy. So you can just use that to kind of like springboard your character and create them. It also says, do this part quickly. Don't plan out like a 50-page backstory. It's more important and exciting, especially within this rule set, to have the character kind of emerge, like the whole concept of emergent narrative and emergent storytelling as you are playing the game versus writing up everything about them beforehand. Also, they're probably going to die a bunch, so you just want to make your character quick. Yeah. It also says if you're having trouble thinking of a name, most of Character 6's advancement descriptions contain names. Use one of those. And if you're having trouble thinking of a character concept, consider a character you like from fiction or history, and maybe combine them with elements of another character you like to create a new character and just go with that. And it also says if you really can't think of anything or just fancy letting the dice do their thing, go to DriveThruRPG and check out Maze Rats, which is a fantastic random tables to inspire an interesting character. I fucking love Maze Rats.
You do fucking love Maze Rats.
I love it, dude. I love it.
Straight up call out to Maze Rats right here.
Seriously. And like I love Knave too, but like I gotta be honest, if I had to pick Maze Rats or Knave, I would pick Maze Rats. But
I also
wish...
really like this. I like that they're like, don't build your character yet. Make a name. Like find a name that you like, that you feel connected to, or that you're inspired by, and just base your character off that. Because I think that's a really clever way to make a character, because your character's going to totally fit their name because you've built everything around it. And for a character that's probably going to die, like this is much better. You don't worry about backstory too much. Like their name is going to be their backstory, essentially. Yeah.
And again, like who you are can emerge as you're playing the game. You can find it as everyone else figures that out too. I do wish, again, though, that DriveThruRPG and Maze Rats were links, and I could click it and it would take me to Maze Rats. Yeah,
it is interesting that, like, I think this is like an earlier PDF for them, right? This is from a couple years ago.
Because Orbital Blues was hyperlinked to shit,
I believe
right?
It was. I believe it was.
So making a character, we already talked about this a little bit. You get your three stats, brawn, wit, and will, which are used for your stats and attacks. You got vigor and grip, which are your 2 resource pools. That's a good way to call it. Or 2 resource pools that quantify the character's physical and mental endurance. You get an archetype, which we'll go over shortly, but it's kind of like the core of your character, of your crypt digger. And you get experience, Basically, and for those that aren't visibly seeing this, it's literally like breakdowns of what the character sheet looks like so that you know what parts go where, which I think is also, it's great. I love this.
It's great. I mean, every game should consider doing that, because a lot of times you read the stats and you go to the character sheet and you're like, okay, it's a little all over the place, especially if you're not like us reading the book for our podcast. So yeah, this is great.
Yeah. You get a space to mark your experience. You get a place to mark your advancements. And again, we'll go over advancements here shortly. Still having parts of the character sheet on the page, so you know which part we're talking about. And we go over stats again. Brawn is a character's physical strength, endurance, and vital force. High brawn character might be a warrior. A low brawn character might be sickly or frail. You have wit, which represents a character's physical, mental, and social agility. Used to dodge a fireball, convince an NPC the character is a friend, pickpocket, or quickly solve a puzzle. High wit character might be nimble and charismatic. A low wit character could be awkward and clumsy. And will, which represents the character's intellect and their mind's power. To remember an obscure fact, to resist a debilitating spell. Most of your casters will have a high will. And your low will characters will probably be faint-hearted or unintelligent. One of the things I do like about the 3 stat system that they use, which again was the same in Orbital Blues, is that they're very what's the word I'm looking for? Ambiguous. Like a lot fits into it. So like if you think of wit, right? It's not just like being quick-tongued or something like that, you know, like good comebacks. It talks about physical, mental, and social agility, which is really cool. So there's a lot built into a number of these. Like brawn, you can't really do a whole lot with brawn. It's your fucking strength. But wit and will pull a whole lot into it, just like the stats did in Orbital Blues, which is like really, really interesting.
I like that wit has agility in it. It totally makes sense to me. That you're quick-witted, and so you'd notice and get out of the way of something really quickly or dodge something very quickly. Yeah,
I like that. But again, you don't necessarily, if you read this without any context, I would think wit would almost be more of the intelligence skill. Right. But as soon as you're like, no, wit is, like you just said, like quick thinking, and then you can use that for physical too, because it's the same concept. It's just like quickly responding to things. I'm like, you're right, that totally makes sense. The fact how you can get from wit to basically your dex checks completely makes sense, but it's not really I wouldn't consider that like a common thought process. So it is really clever. Yeah, it
is very clever. It's probably not my first thought process, but honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, because I actually opened up my game that I've been writing on and off for the past year, I might get rid of the dex on that and change it to like wit. Just a very good way to have 3 stats, you know.
I like it. I mean, I'm a 4-stat guy, but 3 stats totally works. You just have to make them a little bit more
abstract.
Yeah, I mean, or just like more encompassing. You know what I mean? They need to be a little bit, I don't want to say like unfocused, but they need to be like, each one needs to encompass a little bit more as opposed to being a little bit more focused in. Stats. Crypt diggers tend to be very good at one thing, pretty good at another, and average at a third. To represent this, allocate a +2 to one stat, a +1 to another, and a +0 to the remaining one. So you do start off with a +2, which is a decent chance of success for one thing that you're doing.
For one thing, you're gonna be pretty darn good at a single thing. Yeah,
one thing. The normal for normal people is 0 across the board. So you do get a leg up on 2 of your 3 stats just by being a crypt digger. And sometimes due to an affliction, injury, or adaptation, a character stats can be below 0. Don't worry about that. Explore the change using it as an opportunity for character development. And if stat is positive, so this is important. If a stat is positive, add it to any stat checks using it. If negative, subtract it from relevant stat checks. So you can go negative because of bad things that happen to you, and then you do subtract that from your roll. So
brutal.
sucks to suck, you know. And then vigor and grip, we've talked about this before. Vigor is similar to hit points in other games, to represent your health and fighting spirit. Your character starts with 6+ brawn, and grip combines stamina, mana, and sanity. It is spent to gain the upper hand or use some advancements, and depleted when facing psychologically damaging monsters or environments. And your character's starting grip is 4 plus their will. Advancing vigor and grip throughout play. Characters gain new advancements. For each advancement gained through experience, gain +1 grip and vigor. But your vigor can never exceed 5 plus brawn plus the number of advancements. So,
okay,
this is one part that I don't quite get. You start with 6 plus brawn. So why can you never exceed 5 plus brawn plus your advancements? Wouldn't you think it would just be 6 plus brawn plus your advancements? Basically, like, you can't go beyond what you start with plus your advancements. Because how could you, if you start with 6 plus brawn and you get one for every advancement, 5 plus brawn is always one less than that.
Yeah.
So I think this might be a typo.
Do you have the physical book next to you? You want to just look real quick?
I do. What page is this on?
This is on page 21. And everyone who's listening
right
or watching, you
archetypes.
just hang out with me, you know? How's it going, y'all? So,
right before equipment. It still says 5 plus brawn in the book. I just don't understand how that. I don't understand how that math works.
I wonder if it has to do with advancements that boost like vigor by a certain number of, but those numbers being more than 1. So I don't know. Let's keep going. Maybe we can shoot a message to the Soul Muppet team because they respond on Twitter. So
they do. Well, but like I said, it just doesn't quite make sense because if you start with 6 plus brawn and you get one for every advancement, you can't 5 plus brawn is always one less. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. Do you want to hit equipment? I know you thoroughly read that.
Absolutely. So, equipment. Characters start with a toolkit of useful items and weapons. They're always going to have the following, which is 50 feet rope, a bedroll, 3 torches, a week of rations, a backpack, and some basic armor. And then each character is going to get 2 weapons. You have the choice of a hand weapon, light weapon, heavy weapon, 3 thrown weapons, long weapon, and a ranged weapon with 10 ammo. These tables are multiples of D6 for random generation if you feel brave. Oh yeah, so you can just roll on all these tables if you're really feeling froggy, you know. Cool. Mm-hmm. Why would you want to use each weapon? So for hand weapon, if you're high brawn, or for the freedom to use shields, torches, or like other equipment in your offhand, hand weapons for you. A light weapon's good for high wit. Heavy weapon's good for high brawn and someone who wants to do crushing damage. Thrown weapon is great for short range targets. Long weapon is great for high brawn who want to stay away from danger. And the range weapon is great for high wit who want to deal damage from afar. Kind of makes sense. All of them fairly straightforward. On the next page, we have an equipment list. Each character gets 3 pieces of equipment from this list. There's a lot on here. So it's 36.
How would you roll D6s?
So D6 is 36 choices, right? But if we but this is not built as a D6. I looked earlier and I was reading through this and I was like, this isn't built as a D66 table.
No, because you can't have a 1 on a D66 table.
Yeah.
The lowest you could have is
There's a way to do it. Someone smarter than me. Hey, if you're in the chat, tell us. Be smarter than us and tell us. We're both sleepy boys.
But we can also just go to the internet, hit a dice table and just do 1 36-sided dice. And I got a 28. I got a book of magic. I think I get 3 of these, right? I got a book of magic, an antitoxin.
Nice.
And a book of languages. Man, that really...
You're a nerd.
Okay, I was going to say, it really was staying high, and then I rolled a 1. So, yeah. So, cool. Yeah, I got a couple of books, and an antitoxin. That's what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so set of files, hammer, chisel. Yeah.
Yeah. weird that it's set up as there's 36 options, which is D66. There's got to be a smarter way of doing it that I'm just not thinking of because I'm just waking up and you're just going to bed. But we can keep going. We'll move forward. We're going to go on to page 24. Those of y'all reading along of making a character, and we're going to talk about some archetypes. Archetypes, some archetypes.
Yeah.
So there we go. So characters are going to be with an archetype, and this is an explanation of what your character has done previously in their life before they became a digger. Archetypes show what the character's been doing or what the character is good and bad at, and they offer special abilities. They're really your classes. There are a lot of archetypes in this book, and they're all very, very, honestly, all of them are pretty cool. I really enjoyed reading them. I think this might be my favorite part of the book. There are 13 archetypes, and I think we'll probably just pick a couple each. Let's read through every single one. Yeah. Is there anything else? The archetypes are going to give you abilities, so it's important to know them. You'll also start with an advancement listed in chapter 6. There are many advancements, so each archetype comes with 3 suggested. Suggested is very important. You can play as an archetype and do a non-suggestive one and just have like a weird character that has their own cool backstory and stuff. If you're unsure, you can always take extra will, extra wit, or extra brawn, increasing 1 stat if you really cannot pick an advancement to take, and you want to just have a higher stat, which honestly to me kind of sounds boring, but whatever. You do you, princess, you go for it, girl. So advancements. The final step before choosing a journeyman advancement from chapter 6. Remember, you can always take a suggested advancement from your archetype if you're short on ideas. Next steps. Now you finish your character. Most crypt diggers operate in large companies with familiar high attrition, fairly high attrition. Listen, guys, I can read fine. Okay, I'm awake and I can read fine. They establish surface camps near crypt entrances, sending in small disposable parties to gather information and explore the shallows. Your characters are kind of almost disposable assets, but they have this big community. And I think this is why like a Westmarch game would do really well, is because you just go back to camp and next adventure, if 3 different people show up, well, who the hell cares? Like, they just go in, it's who's available for the shift at the time.
This would be perfect to run on West Marches.
It'd be really, really good. And I really like this because I think, one of the biggest things that we all probably come across is like the inability to find a group of people who will regularly commit, And so if you can just take that aspect out and be like, we run the 3rd Sunday of the month, whoever shows up plays, And I think that makes it a lot easier to keep a game going. It makes it more fun too. Yeah, because the one consistent player is going to be you as the Doomsayer, so it'll make it more fun for you at least. Go back and make 1 or 2 more characters. We'll probably die. Yeah. So like we were saying before, your character's probably going to die, so make a couple. Let's go on to the archetypes.
The archetypes. Again, as we hit the beginning of this chapter, there is a piece of art in the background, which is cool. It is still the characters, and they have found a monster, it looks like, or a statue, and blood and guts. So nice big piece of character art there. It's really cool.
Yeah. Sorry. Do you want to pick your favorite, and then I'll pick my favorite? So
sure. Let's go. So throughout all of this stuff, they talk about adventuring days a lot, and basically an adventuring day is just a day. Like you wake up, it happens, and then you go to bed. And that is the adventuring day, because a lot of these will talk about that. An adventuring day ends when characters rest for 4+ hours. Abilities usable during an adventuring day should never be used in a camp on the surface. And it says quick and easy characters. Archetypes aren't strictly necessary, but they mechanically reinforce character backgrounds. So use them. They're good.
I don't know why you wouldn't. I like them.
They're so well done. I really do like them.
Well done.
It's really yeah.
You can really lay into this weird, macabre, just odd vibe this game is going for. And I don't mean odd like a bad way. I mean like a really good way. Like this game is like inherently a little off-putting, you know? And
for sure.
The classes really help like reinforce that, you know?
Yeah, and the art for each one is really neat too. Sure. Well, what class do you want? What archetype do you want to talk about?
The Kabbalist.
It's a good one.
You know, I'm a little magic boy, so yeah. So which one are you doing?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, well, we'll start with the Kabbalist then.
Yeah,
Kabbalists are often cultists or wizards. I will always pick the wizard. Wizard's apprentice whose unpleasant, terrifying, or otherworldly experience allow them to handle the underworld better than most. Been there, done that. Kabbalist's strange experience allows them to shrug off what terrifies others. The first time each adventuring day a Kabbalist would spend or lose one grip, they don't. They're extra gripping, you know? That thing be gripping. I've seen things. Experts in sacrilege, most Kabbalists have seen many awful things. Kabbalists have the upper hand on grip checks, already slightly gone. Kabbalists are a little unhinged. Beginning play with an affliction chosen and rolled randomly from chapter 8. The suggested advancements are take fire and lightning strange for blasting magic. I also like that it says suggested advancements, the advancement and why you would take it, right? You would take fire and lightning strange for blasting things with magic. You would take spirits of the beyond if interested in necromancy, which 100% would be my choice because that is always my choice in the wizard. And then tough as nails for a grizzled henchman. You can be like the wizard who has the bodyguard, which is one of my favorite fucking wizard tropes ever. Because you can pair up with a buddy, or in this case, an NPC. But yeah, I really like this one. I think it's a little uncomfortable and off-putting, and I like the fact that they start with an affliction, but they're also like they can just shrug off the shit that horrifies other people. So,
I'm gonna talk about the Physiker, which is an interesting class. I don't. Where the fuck are you? The Physiker. So again, with the archetypes, you get basically two good things and a bad thing for each one. Physicers are medical folk enlisted in Crypt Digger Company, disgraced barber surgeons, medical researchers, or military field doctors. Perhaps not the most skilled of combatants, but the medical skills are often useful in the crypt. The first one is called I'm a Doctor, Not a... ... Your medical training leads to other helpful talents. Once per adventuring day, you can reroll one die used in a stat check where medical experience is relevant. Good. Field surgery. Physicers know how to stitch people back together even in a crypt's terrible conditions. With 4 hours of uninterrupted work, the Physiker may make one attempt to heal another character's recent injury, capital injury, with a past wit check, and the patient passes a brawn check. So 2 checks to have to do this. If both fail, the patient rolls a second injury. Regardless of the outcome, they both lose 1 grip. Yeah, right? Don't fuck it up.
That's such a good one.
And then the last one is called Do No Harm, which is the quote-unquote bad stat, or bad feature. The Physiker, they are not skilled combatants, and their first attack each combat is against the odds, which means basically their version of disadvantage, because you're a doctor, not a fighter. The suggested advancements are Lay on Hands or the Holy Song of War for a religious background, Nimble Dodge if you really don't fancy getting killed, or Concoctionist or Toxic Blades to tamper with chemical experiments. So that's a good one. I think another one that would be good to go over, it's one of the ones, it is the only one that doesn't have any art. It's the Everyman, which is basically like your classless.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Where is that one?
So, it's right above.
Yeah, I found it.
Not every Crypt Digger fits an archetype. Not everyone is glorious hero, professional thief, or sinister cultist. Sometimes you're an everyman. The one feature is probably good at something. Everyman has a niche skill from their prior life and have the upper hand attempting it or something involving it. Probably bad at something else. Everyman has a skill, vice, drawback, or negative personality trait that makes actions involving it against the odds. Suggested advancements, literally anything. I really like this as just a like catch-all. I kind of want to make my own thing. Basically, it's like pick anything you want. You're good at it, but you got to pick another thing that you're bad at. Good luck, fucker.
Yeah, my guy's a former fisherman who's addicted to cocaine. So anything to do with like cleaning fish or cooking, he's great at. But listen, the moment he has to be strong, he's not that, you know.
No, his heart's just gonna explode from all the cocaine. The rest of the archetypes, again, we're not going to go over, but it's a cool list. And you can
all pretty cool. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. There's the believer. We already talked about the Kabbalist, the cutthroat, which is it's kind of like your rogue, dastards, which are kind of like your criminal. We talked about the everyman. The free blade is basically a mercenary.
It's a weird face.
Yeah. Bug-eyed. The outcast is exactly what it sounds like. The physiker we talked about. The protagonist is kind of comes off as like the paladin, like the lawful good paladin.
Yeah, totally.
The scholar, searching for forbidden knowledge. The traveler is another cool one. You've seen the world, and you travel all the way here just to fuck around in some crypts. And then the veteran, which again, you have years of experience, but you're also battle scarred. It's another cool one. Before we get into equipment, and then once again, more of the story that I'm not going to read by the book, and a cool piece of art in the background that is part of the story. So I think we said in the beginning, this book is pretty art light. I do think that these big, cool, like coherent storyline pieces at the beginning of every chapter definitely like bumps that up a little bit, though.
Yeah.
So yeah. Do you want to take over equipment? Oh yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Stoked to go through it. Equipment is a key tool in the Crypt Digger's arsenal. While archetypes provide skills and advancements granting raw power, equipment leverages their skills solving problems. Very few problems can't be solved with time and the right equipment. Equipment is everything. You're Crypt Diggers, you know. Inventory. Pieces of equipment are physical objects and must be stored somewhere. Assume most Crypt Diggers are laden with belts, pouches, backpacks for storing equipment. Adventuring Crypt Diggers can carry an item in each hand or a large two-handed item. 2 easily accessible items on the belt or scarab. Whatever fits within a backpack, scabbard. I don't know why I did that. Whatever fits within a backpack or a similar container. Wherever they are, items fill inventory slots equal to the number of hands it takes to hold, like we said earlier. Doomsayer has a final word. So if there is something that's a weird thing that you pick up, it's going to be up to the Doomsayer to see how much slots it fills. In total, Crypt Diggers cannot comfortably carry anything more than 12 plus will or wit, whichever's higher, plus 2 times their brawn, which is a ton.
Well, 12? I mean, so if you're a wizard boy, you're probably gonna put your brawn at 0, right?
Right.
Okay, 2 times 0 is 0.
Yeah, but 12 plus 2, because my wits is gonna, or my will.
So 14.
It's 14. You know.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's bad. It just seems like a lot, you know.
But if you think about it, if you flip that and the strong boy has 0, let's say they have 1 wit, right? Right. But then they have 2 brawn, that gives you 13 plus 4. You're at 17 for being a strong boy. So, I mean, it's a lot of things, but I do think that there is an emphasis on the, like, if you have armor, if you have basic armor, let's not even say that. Let's say you're the strong boy. If you have heavy armor, a great sword, and a pouch of coins, you're already down 7 slots. And that's not carrying anything besides your armor, 1 sword, and I still think it's a lot, you know. Yeah. But it's not as much as it sounds like, because basically just by your armor and a coin pouch, you go from 17 to 10 pretty quickly.
Right.
But what's interesting,
take slots, even though it's something you're wearing, you know.
I like that. That's the way that in the game that I'm writing.
Yeah,
I use the same thing.
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's not. This game doesn't use a mechanic like Rune Cairn or Cairn or anything like that, where your afflictions and things like that become inventory slot take up. You know what I mean? They don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, your inventory is just your inventory, and if you carry too much shit, you're just bad at everything you do, which makes sense. So
cool.
But I mean, again, if you got like a 50-pound rucksack and you're running around, you're not only your body is going to be spent, your mind is going to be like, oh my god, you know, like trying to focus on things too. So yeah.
Money. So Best Left Buried is a game about dungeoneering. And that's fucking sick. And the crypt spoils are lucrative if sold to the right bidder. Retrieved treasure is collected by the company's quartermaster, who sells it to a specialist dealer, antiquer, or auction house. For inexperienced crypt diggers, these fiscal processes often occur behind the scenes. Doomsayer is gonna curtain it and be like, this stuff is just happening in the background. If you're interested, or like let your Doomsayer know essentially if you're interested in role playing this aspect of it, or if not, like this could just be a thing that happens like, unconsciously in the background. A crypt digger's salary is equal to about 1/3 of the recovered treasure returned to the camp, usually to be spent on vices or specialist equipment, or less frequently saved. The company spends the remaining on equipment, supplies, and camp followers' wagons. At camp, the company provides the crypt diggers with food, drinks, and accommodation. Most skimp on such luxuries when possible, leaving crypt diggers with moth-bitten blankets, simple gruel, and watery beer, so Bud Light. In contrast, the most successful and illustrious on wine and dine their crypt diggers at great expense. Okay. Robust but plain adventuring equipment is also provided. Simple weapons, basic armor, and many other tools are supplied. So pretty much your camp is going to support you, and that's why you're only getting 1/3 of that coin back, baby.
I think we're hitting the part of the book where I noticed a lot more typos, and I think that's the start of it right there at the bottom of 42.
Okay, that wasn't me, right? That time.
Not that time. The most successful and illustrious on wine and dine their crypt digger at great expense. It's just I think is just a superfluous word. I think it's just the most successful and illustrious wine and dine their crypt diggers at great expense. So on is just an extra word.
Yeah. As a crypt digger, whatever money you make, part of it's going to go to the camp. When you're Doomsayer sell stuff, you have access to basic equipment. You can spend the rest of your money buying drugs, which is what I would suggest to do, or buying equipment, or maybe saving it. That doesn't sound nearly as fun, especially if your character is just going to die anyway. Remember that your crypt diggers are infamous for being pieces of shit, frankly, like criminals. Like uncouthness is a quality that you'll find in your crypt diggers. They're pretty removed from society and are not the best people.
Yeah. Dang, there's a lot on money here.
There's a lot on money.
Before we continue with the money in this section called Money Continued, we're going to take a quick break. Hello, and welcome back to the Weekly Scroll Podcast. We're jumping back into Money Continued. So, affluence checks. Add a 4th stat starting at 1 to the character sheet. Affluence. Whenever they gain an advancement, increase affluence by 1. Whenever they wish to buy something, roll an affluence check with difficulty proportionate to the item's cost. Cheap or insignificant items like meals or drinks are trivial. Trivial meaning you just do it. You just get it. Plentiful items have the upper hand. More expensive items are potentially against the odd or impossible. Impossible means you fail no matter what. On a 9+, they pass the check and successfully buy the item. Otherwise, the check is unsuccessful and they cannot afford it unless they dig into their savings, reducing affluence 1 to pass. Probably by 1 to pass. If a character's affluence drops below 0, they are in debt. Was this the like alternate way to do monies, or is this just this is just everything? Yeah. Exertion. Yeah, exertion cannot be used to reroll affluence checks. And experience is gold. Whenever a character returns treasure, they gain experience and equivalent affluence. Each point of affluence is equivalent to a fortnight. Again, superfluous, I think, equivalent to a fortnight of wages for a working class laborer, and is used for commerce. I'm surprised how many typos pop up like from here on out.
This is interesting, and I think it says it somewhere in here, but this game really is like it's like a modern OSR, like it's a dungeon crawler, right? And it's all about gaining treasure and using that as experience, but is like, it feels more like a narrative based on like character skills and stuff. So it's very cool modern take on like the dungeon crawling like tabletop game. I really do like it. So
I wonder. So I really want to hear him say his name, because I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. But Yokai Gal, the guy who did Cairn, has an NSR Discord server, and recently put out an article that links another article that talks about the NSR, which is basically the new school revolution, but there's another word in there, like some with swords or whatever. And it's basically like what you, at least from what I get from this, and maybe I'm completely wrong, it's that what you just said. It's basically like OSR, because a lot of people consider OSR just retro clones, right? Like just like OSC, OSCs and OSR, and anything that's not that isn't that. So it's like, okay, fine, keep your like your OSCs and your
keep your fucking acronym.
Yeah. The retro clones, one of the ones that we won't name, stuff like that. But then and Neon Lords, I think, is retro clone. Then games like Cairn and Knave and this are NSR. Then they use OSR's kind of like core ness of just like emergent narrative, and not having the DM as a storyteller, and risk of death, and not everything is solved by combat, things like that, but with a more modern take on the mechanics and things like that. And I'm curious if all of these creators who have created games like that, if they subscribe to the concept of NSR to get away from the whole conversation of like, what really is the OSR? And it's like, God. Who cares, you fucks?
Who the fuck cares? Yeah. Is the game good?
Yeah, and then fine, if that's how you are, then this is NSR. Yeah. It is defined, and it is what it is. So I'd be curious.
Like that. So
yeah. I'd be curious I'd be curious if Jelly Muppet, one of the writers for this, what their take on NSR is, and if they would consider this core, this rule set that they use in this and Order Blues as NSR. So we just talked about affluence checks. Money continue. There's a price list. Use the price list below as guidelines. Use a cost column if using experience as gold. I hate them, but I like this because it's not really a price list.
That's very true.
Use the cost column if using experience as gold, and the check column to determine affluence's check difficulty. Prices of items marked with whatever that symbol is. It's kind of like a tilde, but not. Prices fluctuate heavily based on availability and local demand. So, for example, the item could be a round of drinks. It costs 1 affluence, and it's a trivial check, which means you just spend an affluence and you get it. But if you want to do trade goods, like a barrel or a bushel or something like that, it costs, what is that little symbol marked by? They fluctuate heavily. Okay. It's 2 affluence, and you roll with the upper hand. So you still have to roll, but you do get advantage, or their version of advantage, which is 3 D6, and then you take the highest. And then a couple more prices: poison, gunpowder, plate armor, potion, spell scroll, magic item. Magic item is 10 affluence. So you gotta really bank up a lot of affluence to be buying some of the stuff, because whenever you gain an advancement, you gain an affluent. So you got to be like you're 10 advancements in, which means 80 XP. Because it's 8 per advancement before, and you're gonna live that long. I don't really think
Gosh,
so.
that's the one guy you just can't seem to die, you know?
Yeah. And
that's quite a bit.
that's a lot for a magic item. I mean, it's
yeah, for a magic
the next
item,
highest is just a spell scroll is 5, so it's literally half. Yeah. A little chat about currency in Lindal, which is the setting that Best Up Air says. In Lindal, golden scepters are minted in White Tower and centrally issued across the entire duchy. Silver sigils are stamped with Duke, who minted them's marked with the Duke, who minted them's marked. And their value is issuing duchy
you can take
dependent.
the from like 2 pages before and just move it down here.
Yeah. Roughly 12 to 8 sigils equal a single scepter. Historically, the royal mint printed gold on crowns in Kalman, but possessing them or melting them for gold is treason against the Wizard of White Tower. Many crypts contain crowns, so they are black market currency among criminals, rogue wizards, and crypt diggers. Each point of affluence represents about a scepter, 12 sigils, or 12 crowns. Hirelings, followers listed costs do not include hazard pay, so despite having been armed and armored, they only fight defending themselves. Hirelings are armed and armored for combat, but will not engage in suicidal behavior unless offered additional compensation. Makes fucking sense.
Yeah, that's very fair. Very reasonable.
Yeah. Incredibly reasonable. Using equipment. At the Doomsayer's discretion, equipment might grant the upper hand or on stat checks, make the impossible possible, or render possible trivial. Bolded equipment's specific effects are listed below. So you got medicine, which is a once daily thing, and a character can take a minute outside of combat using a dose of medicine to restore 1 vigor. Medicine might be bandages, tonics, salves, or herbal painkillers. You also got venom, alchemist fire, books. The alchemist fire is cool. A sealed clay jar of oil that combusts in naked air, often used by crypt diggers to set objects aflame, can be thrown by a wit check or poured out. And then weapons. Do you want to hit weapons?
Did you? Yeah, real quick. Did you got some books when you rolled for equipment? You remember there was a book of magic, right?
Yeah, there's a magic book and a book of languages, I think.
You can study books for over an hour. And get stuff from them if you pass a wits check. So you know.
A wits check maybe. Yeah, I'd be curious. It's all based on the Doomsayer, and what info they get from it. So I mean, a book of languages, I could learn a language. Book of magic. Yeah. I got magic.
You're gonna learn how to light up a dark area. You know.
Yeah. Gonna get lit.
I'll go over weapons though. You know, I'll get right. into the weapons. I
think you talked about most of this before.
Yeah, I think we actually went over this during the character creation. So yeah, weapons have a type. The weapons types have specific. Yeah, and those types have specific mechanical effects, right? When choosing weapon type, unless otherwise described, weapons deal normal damage and have no initiative modifier. Which have we gone over? Yeah, it doesn't matter.
This is the first time it comes up.
Yeah, I remember it's a little bit later on. Because I actually read that part. Have an initiative modifier, can be wielded in one hand and attack at melee range. So basically, just weapons are weapons, and they work like weapons. Unless specified otherwise, they work like normal weapons. So you have a nice little table here. Let's do, just kind of shows you type, range, attack, damage modifier, and initiative modifier. So for hand weapons, they're going to be melee range. Attack is going to use brawn. The damage modifier is going to be 0 or +1 if it's two-handed. There is no initiative modifier. For a heavy weapon, it'll be melee range, brawn, +1 damage, -1 initiative.
So with heavy and long, you get -1 initiative.
Yeah,
which is interesting. And then only with at base do heavy and light give you damage modifiers. Heavy with +1, light at -1. But then multiple other ones give you +1 if you use them two-handed and a -1 in melee. I think it's really interesting that for the most part, I would say 80% is just what it is. Like there's no modifier, there's no initiative change. No. It's literally just the stat. but I like, and it makes sense that the heavy, the light, the long, the hand weapons, like with different aspects, can be tweaked just by a point either way, which is really, really interesting.
I think improvise is the best one. You like against the odds brawn.
Yeah, and half damage.
And half damage. Yeah, your goals it's gonna fucking suck.
Just slapping people with a turkey leg or something.
Yeah. So hand weapons, crypt diggers, for crypt diggers, prizing flexibility, including broadswords, hand axes, and maces. Okay. Wielded one-handed for normal damage, freeing the offhand for a shield or a torch or whatever other tool you want to use. Heavy weapons are large and powerful, including greatswords, battle axes, and wielding. But two-handed damage are wielded, two-handed, afflict. Oh yeah, +1 damage, but reduced initiative by 1. So pretty much what we just read above in the whole table.
And we went and you read through, like, this is just longer versions of what we read earlier. It's all the same. It's just breakdown of the table and what kind of the weapon is. So yeah, I think the only one that isn't is gunpowder weapon. If you want to hit that. Yeah,
gunpowder weapons. On the other hand, some games include gunpowder weapons. Mine will.
Mine won't.
Yeah, that's that just it makes total sense. You at the moment I was like, yeah, I will, and you're like, no, I won't. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So, if your Doomsayer allows them, which Ryan won't, choose which category and type they best fit: a musket or arquebus. Sure. Maybe I'm not big on classic guns, maybe a ranged gunpowder weapon, a pistol, maybe a thrown gunpowder weapon. Oh, that's pretty cool. And a blunderbuss, maybe a heavy gunpowder weapon. I really like that, actually. I like that they break it down like that, and it's not all just a ranged gunpowder weapon. Attacks with gunpowder weapons always use wit. They have their normal weapon type, range, and damage. An initiative modifier, but always attack with upper hand, regardless of the target or situation, but require a full minute minute reloading and are usually only fired once per combat. Okay, so that makes sense. You got a gun, you fire it once in combat, and then you kind of ditch it because a minute is 6 rounds of combat. Ammunition is shot and powder, 10 attacks worth provided in a character creation. So cool. You can use it 10 times before you have to get new supplies. But yeah, guns are interesting. Gunpowder weapons are expensive, likely costing 2-3 times as much as a normal weapon type. But yeah, very cool. There are also strange weapon types. If your character's weapon doesn't fit these categories, choose the closest. A whip might be approximate to a wit-based throwing weapon. But yeah, that's the thing to work out with your Doomsayer. Totally makes sense. But there is a place for you to have a weapon that's not listed above.
The equipment section, I think, is the longest section in this book. It just goes and goes. Yeah.
I was just like, we're still reading. We haven't gotten to advancements, which I want to get to advancements.
I know advanced. We're only halfway through the book, but we're just cruising through this. So we'll cruise a little faster. This is on the shields and armor. You got them. An unarmored character has 7 armor to start off the bat. Basic armor. Again, there's a little typo here where standard and crypt digger is there's no space. Standard crypt digger armor is made of heavy boiled leather, chainmail, and protective helmet, providing 8 armor. So 1 more than not having it at all. And plate armor is boiled leather over chainmail, and it's 9 armor, but it's heavy and cumbersome, granting -1 initiative. So if you have plate armor and a heavy sword, you got -2 to initiative rolls. The characters without at least characters without at least 2 brawn. The stat checks are against the odds, cannot escape, and always have initiative 0. The shield increases your armor by 1. There is some esoteric equipment. Some crypt diggers employ unusual equipment, while potions, poisons, and spell scrolls can be bought and sold. They're so rare outside of crypts that most have never seen one. Their trade is regulated in towns. Potions are drinkable chemical concoctions granting monstrous powers, made by specialists called chemikers. Every potion has an associated adaptation, which we'll get to. As an action, you can spend a point of grip to drink a potion, granting the adaptation's effect for a single combat or 5 minutes, whichever is shorter. The grip loss represents the potion ravaging your mind and body. Kind of like witchery is what it feels like.
Yeah, very witchery. Yeah.
Yeah. Potions can be bought from tradesmen for 5 affluence. Found as treasure or brewed using concoctionist advancement. And again, we'll get to advancements, which is really cool soon. A potion found in the wild's effect can be ambiguous. Yep. Poisons are a thing. They can be created or purchased. Using a poison depletes it. The first time a poison weapon deals damage or when consumed, the poison's negative effect is inflicted for a single combat or 5 minutes. Poison's effect depends on the type. And they can be bought from tradesmen for 3 affluence or use that Toxic Blades advancement. And then there are spell scrolls as well. There are sorceress texts granting knowledge of heinous spells. You can use a spell. Using a spell scroll requires at least 1 will. Every scroll has associated advancement. You spend a grip plus the advancement's grip cost, if applicable, consuming the scroll, which crumbles to dust. Reading a spell scroll that grants a titled advancement requires at least 2 will and cost 2 grip. Again, there's different layers of advancements, journeyman, titled, those kind of things. Alternatively, characters can learn its spell, destroying it, roll d6, gaining that much experience and losing half as much grip rounded down. The next advancement must be the scrolls. That's cool. So basically, you can use the scroll to get closer to your advancement by sacrificing grip and getting half of the experience towards it, but you have to pick that one next. So you really lock yourself in if you do that. Some ways of spellbooks. Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great idea.
If you have a strong boy who has 0 will, though, you're kind of fucked because you can't do this.
It's a really cool way to mechanically have basically how 5e you can write the scroll in your spell book with ink and crap. Yeah. But this is a much more concrete mechanical way to use it, which I really like.
What's 5e?
Spells 5e. It's this pretty small indie game. I don't know if you've heard of it. And then there are also holy relics. Holy relics are the remains, period. Even in death, the remains exude power and righteousness. Again, I think there's something missing there. The equipment section really does have quite a few typos in it. Missing words and extra words and things like that. Using a holy relic requires at least 1 will. Every holy relic has an associated monster mood from chapter 9. To use a holy relic, brandish it with 1 hand as an action and roll a successful will check. This is the first time the character uses a holy relic. The check has the upper hand. If they cannot see any monsters with the relic's associated move, the check is against the odds. If it fails, you lose a grip. Otherwise, gain 2 relic grip, which can only be spent on exertion, holy advancements, and failed grip checks, which dissipates when combat ends or after 1 minute, whichever is more appropriate. Once you use a holy relic, must be reinvigorated by placing on the altar an appropriate god or saint alongside a worthy sacrifice determined by the Doom Speaker.
Doom Speaker?
Yeah. Doomsayer, right?
I thought it was Doomsayer.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying to you.
Yeah. There's lots of typos in this section. Holy relics can be found as treasure. Yep. Or you can buy them. They're expensive. And now we're getting into advancements. Well, we're going further into the story here at the beginning. Again, by the book. And in the background, there is some stuff going on in our story with Duloc and his homies.
God damn it. Fucking name, bro.
So advancements. I know you've been waiting for this. You want to kick this one off?
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Advancements are abilities that make characters better adventurers, potentially granting a magical power or trained special move by increasing their stat. Character stat start with 1 journeyman advancement, a type of advancement available to all characters. Each advancement's flavor text is a guideline for you to attempt, and we're going to go through it, and you can see oh yeah, it's a good guideline, but I can definitely change it around to fit my character. There are many unorthodox choices, so think outside the box. You don't need to stick to a suggested advancement. Crypt diggers, which is not bolded. Crypt digger companies have room for muscled scholars, cunning protagonists, and wizardly dastards, and I really like that about this game. Also, remember that your advancements don't have to follow the same path. A character could be enriched by an unexpected advancement. A priest might call searing lightning with fire and lightning strange. A rogue may benefit from visions with I see truth in the stars. A mage may gain some dungeoneering utility with trap breaker. They have a little example here. The battle frenzy, a martial advancement might be reflavored as holy or spiritual for a religious character like a crusader or a flagant. I'm not gonna read the rest of the examples. You can read them. What's up?
Flagellant.
What did I say?
Flagant.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Flagellant, like someone that whips themselves and shit.
Yeah, no, I know.
I love flagellants. So. Yeah.
I've been saying it wrong forever then, which is fine. Not a lot of whipping myself in my world. So, cool. Advancements keep going. So, gaining new advancements. Characters gather experience through play through play by accumulating treasure, passing grip checks, and enacting cunning plans. Whenever a character accumulates 8 experience, which I think is actually the same as Over the Blues. It was you got 8 blues until you got a new thing, right? Yeah. Point being, very similar. Yeah. Resetting so accumulating experience, resetting it to 0, they add a new advancement and gain 1 vigor and grip. Oh, so every time you get an advancement, you do get 1 more vigor.
Yeah.
Okay. We still think it's
that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying that the 5 you start with 6 plus brawn, and then you get 1 for every advancement. You can't have 5 plus brawn advancements because you like the math doesn't work. You start with 6 plus brawn. Yeah, right.
So you're always down 1 HP. You're always down 1 vigor. Cool. Types and titles. Some advancements are followed by a type: arcane, bardic, commanding, devious, druidic, holy, martial, or technical. If a journeyman advancement has 2 types, they all apply. A character with 4 journeyman advancements, at least 2 of the same type, it becomes titled and can access special advancements in the Best Left Buried Heroic Zine. So yeah, you gain these titles through advancements, and if you have several of the same title, you become titled, and you can get special advancements based on that. Do you have the Heroic Zine near you?
There isn't a physical version. It's on digital, but gotcha. Yeah.
Buy the book. Yeah. So, very interesting mechanic for advancements, especially when you get to a higher tier player, if you ever get there. But yeah, so we're gonna go over journeyman advancements. Do you want to pick one and I'll pick one? Do you want to go through?
Yeah.
There's so many of them. We're not going to go through all
There's
of them.
There's so many. Yeah. There's a couple that I really, really liked.
I liked so many of them.
Yeah, so many. We can pick 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Well, there's some that we've talked about already. The Concoctionist, which makes concoctions and potions and stuff. I like Child of Prophecy. I think that's kind of neat. They spoke great tales of Leo. They say a star fell on the village green when he was born. A hag seer told him he would grow to be a legend known across the 9 duchies. 'Twas a shame he died in that ditch, rent by Shambler's claws. Such an ironic destiny for so great a hero. Luck guides character towards their destiny. Roll a d6 at the start of each adventuring day. The result can replace a single die roll regardless of who rolled it. Choose to replace the roll after rolling but before applying the outcome. So it's kind of like a like the prophecy, the divination wizard in the dragon game. This advancement is exclusive to character creation, or if the Doomsayer allows, following a weird or wonderful act of destiny. I like that this one has to be done at character creation because you are a child of prophecy. Like, yeah, you can't become a child of prophecy when you're like 40. Like, it just doesn't, like, you know, you were for 40 years and you just didn't know it. I gotcha. But you can't just like become one. Yeah. So that's a neat one. What do you got?
I have on 59 Eldritch Pact.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Quentin was an odd fellow, always mumbling to himself, always observing strange little rituals. We just thought him mad, as we all were in our own ways. Oh yeah, so sorry. Then we saw the Cinder Beast he made deals with, and in a moment we knew him to be a little better than the crypt things themselves. The character packs with a powerful, the character makes a pact. There we go. I like that better. I'm going to say that with a powerful extraplanar creature like a Cinder Beast, Herald, or Beyonder, promising servitude in exchange for world-bending powers. Immediately choose 2 more advancements as gifts from their patron, which is fucking sick. Note which advancements were gained from the Eldritch Pack. These do not grant additional vigor or grip, totally makes sense, nor count towards requisite advancements to become titled. Touching such powerful beings' minds adversely affects one's health, gaining a random affliction, either chosen or rolled at random, which is me. I'm going to roll at random. Eldritch Packs always return to bite. Patrons may demand confusing or difficult favors fulfilled. Consequences for refusing can be dire, including but not limited to additional afflictions or injuries, loss of vigor or grip, stat reduction, or revocation of the Eldritch Pack. They'll revoke your fucking pack. You'll be out. You'll be out in the street. Or even death. Might just kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was, I like that one. I also just liked, in that one dragon game, I just like the warlock because it gives you story, fodder. And I always just enjoy that. Like, yeah, they want you to do this. Like, fuck, I've used it to turn my player characters secretly against the rest of the party, and it's hilarious and fun for me.
So good. You have to. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So
Fire and Lightning Strange is an arcane and druidic one that's really neat.
Great one.
Helwis stared in the demon's eyes, speaking a cryptic incantation. Her hands shaking and pupils glowing with otherworldly light, she smote the beast with arcane force, and it fell. Flesh crisp and smoldering. When taken, choose an element or magical substance, fire, ice, water, lightning, thorns, gravity, etc. The character can magically strike down enemies with this element. You can spend 1 to 3 grip and an action to make a will-based attack, always with the upper hand, against an enemy within short range. Multiply, is it D6 damage, question mark? By the grip cost.
Let's
so
see.
I believe it's multiply D6 damage by the grip cost. This damage is magical for any relevant advancements and adaptations. That one's a glaring, like, I have no. It's difficult to decide what they were trying to say.
This is the most we've ever run into like extra
Typos.
Words and like typo errors ever.
Yeah, and it went from the PDF and made it into like a new edition of the book.
Is this and that as well?
I'm pretty sure what page.
We don't have to check every single one, but it's just like because we have come across typos before, but then we looked in the actual physical book and they were like, oh, it's not there.
Yeah. What is this one?
Page 60.
Yeah, it's in it.
Very cool. God, it's in the book that you have. Oh, that's such a
that's a bummer.
Great. Yeah, it's kind of
multiply D6 damage by the grip cost is what I think it is saying. So basically, you can spend 1 to 3, and you get a D6 for each grip you spend. Is what I'm getting from that. The damage is magical for any relevant advancements and adaptations. Fire and Lightning Strange can be taken repeatedly for a new element each time. Specify which elements whenever you attack with the advancement. I love that you can become like an elementalist. You can literally be like striking down with like fire and lightning and ice and just take it every time and be like, I just control all the elements. You know, gravity. You know,
you could be the Avatar, dude.
You could literally be. You could be the Avatar in this game.
You
but like a scummy. Like if the Avatar was like
M. Night Shyamalan movie, you could be Ong. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I never watched anything that had to do with Avatar. Not anything against it. Just never did.
I've never had a TV show make me cry so much in my life. And Emily teased me for it, and then she watched it, and then she cried, and I'm like, no, see, you know?
I don't know because I haven't watched it, but I know it's good. I have no problem with it. It's just, it's so far down on my list of things of media that I want to consume that it's just probably never going to happen. I never finished Naruto because honestly, Shippuden
is amazing.
Not as good as, it's not as good as Naruto.
You're wrong. So, you watch the pain arc, and you tell me that, like, you look me. I did
watch the pain arc, and yes, when a certain person is no longer with us, it's sad. But I'm telling you, the Sasuke retrieval arc 10 times better than anything I've seen so far in Shippuden.
Sasuke when boys become men, is pretty strong. It's a pretty strong arc. So
it's a good one. Anyway, I know I didn't get to the best stuff, but I'm 150 episodes in and nothing's fucking going on.
Wait, are you watching every episode?
No, I skipped all the filler bullshit, and it's still too much. It starts hitting that Dragon Ball Z like thing, like pacing, where it takes 5 episodes just to get through a fucking fight, and he does his like talk no jutsu. Hey, thanks for your sub drop. Where he's literally just like, all right, Pain, you murdered everybody in my village. Let's talk. Fuck off. Anyway, do you want to do another one?
Yeah, I'll do one more. I scrolled down too far, but let me scroll back up, and we'll probably do. Which one did I? There are a lot that I really like. What was let's do Spirits of the Beyond.
Oh yeah, that was the one I was gonna do next. That's a good one.
Yeah. So Spirits of the Beyond on 64. Kraus, a grave digger by trade, knelt over the corpse with his hands in the depths of its throat, reaching for some unknowable viscera. The cadaver convulsed, opened its pale eyes, and pulled itself to its feet. That wasn't the last time we saw him raise the dead. Spend one grip and an action to reanimate the corpse. Stats below. To serve for a single combat or 5 minutes. Your corpse has 8 armor, 9 vigor, 1 brawn, 0 wit, 0 will. And it has a hand weapon, prying hands. And I love that shit because, bro, if I could be a necromancer and everything, I'd be a necromancer everything. I do this, and I'd take that elemental magic and I'd pick ice. And I would be a necromancer.
Icy death.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Last one before we move on. The Witch's Curse. Arcane, Bardic, Druidic, and Holy. Daryl flexed her fist, contorting space itself around the ogre to slow its blows. Spend grip, minimum 1, equal to any stat of a creature within short range to curse it. The target is against the odds on the next 3 stat checks or attacks using that stat. Love that. Like a big old ogre, probably going to be brawn. Yeah. Next 3 checks or attacks. Yeah. So basically just disadvantage. It's a great, the rules are so clean in this.
Yeah.
And it's so like well done in the ways that they use the very simple rules to do not necessarily complex things, but really out there things. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh wait, how do you do a witch's curse? Pretty straightforward. This makes sense. And you're like, that's absolutely a witch's curse. Like mechanically, it feels really good. Like all of these as I read through them, and I think you felt the same way. You're just like, they all feel really good. They feel really unique.
All of them are very, very cool. Like there's some very understated ones that I think are very utilitarian. I would still take. But like, yeah, there's a lot going on here, and I like pretty much all of it, you know?
I think it was Red Giant where they had a lot of, I can't remember what they were called, but they had kind of skills like this that you could take or whatever. And some of them were fucking bangers. They were really, really good.
They were like kind of curse things. You got positive and you got negative. Yeah.
But some of them were just like, you get like a +1 or something. Like not all of them were bangers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the one that I really liked was the Hand of God one, where you could just remove one person from like existence, but you had to roll, and it might be one of your party or something.
I think my favorite one was the one where like you got to do a thing or whatever, but then like one of your bones broke every time, and after like a certain amount of bones break, you're just like dead because you can't move. That was a cool one. But there were a number of ones in there that I remember reading where they were like, it's just like a +1 or a -1, and it's just like, In this, though, I feel like I didn't read a single one where I was just like, eh. Like, I could see myself making a character that used every single one of these. And there's pages of these. Pages and pages of these. I mean, it's literally, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages of advancements. And I know there's more in some of the other zines.
Yeah, so, and then, like, once you get titled, like, you open up in the heroic scene or whatever, like a whole other tier of titled, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like a bunch of them in there too. We're getting into playing the game, which I thought we already were. But let's see what this is about. Again, there's another piece of art in the background of this.
We're gonna rehash a lot of information going through this right now.
But we don't even really need to. So we already know what stat checks are. You use your 3. I don't mind this. It's just a breakdown of everything all in one spot.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. So stat check, when you need to do something that can accrue risk. You do a stat check. You use your brawn, wit, or will for that. Your stat checks are 2d6 plus a relevant stat. You have to get a 9+ on the action to succeed. Otherwise, you fail. Upper hand is when you have advantage. Against the odds is when you have disadvantage. Instead of 2d6, you roll 3d6 each time. And with upper hand, you take the 2 highest. And with the against the odds, you take the 2 lowest. I just talked about upper hand and against the odds. Multiple instances. Basically, they cancel each other out until there's one left, and that's the one you get. So if you get 3 instances of against the odds and somehow 4 instances of upper hand, you get upper hand. And it doesn't stack. Like, it's whichever one you're left with after they cancel each other out is the one you get. So if you have one of each, you got nothing, basically. So long story short, they cancel out until there's only one left, and it doesn't stack. And that's what this entire page does. Trivial means you don't. Yeah.
Sorry, the way you just phrased that is like, that's what this entire page says.
Yeah. It does say, though, on a stat check, if you have 3 instances of upper hand with, like, not canceled out, 3 just good upper hands, anything you're trying to do becomes trivial and you don't even need to roll for it. But if you have 3 instances of against the odds, it becomes impossible and you don't roll for it because you literally can't succeed at it. Which is cool. I like that. If you have enough advantage, basically, you don't even need to fuck with rolling. And I really like that. Yeah. That you can just take some rolling out. More art on the page. Yep. Exertion. Characters can spend grip on exertion, overcoming poor dice rolls after a roll of pretty much anything. But before the Doomsayers narrates the roll's results, you may spend any amount of grip, re-rolling 1 die for each grip spent. It also says on an opponent's attack. You can force a re-roll on an opponent's attack. Regardless of outcome, the new result stands. You can never use exertion to re-roll a re-roll die. So the thing is, you don't get a whole ton of grip. And, like, if it hits 0 ever, you're fucking dead. So if you're using a ton of exertion, you're really risking an opportunity later where grip comes up when you don't really want it to. Yeah. And your mind breaks and you die.
It won't be gripping. It won't be gripping, you know?
It won't be. It'll be a loose grip.
Yeah.
Nobody wants a loose grip. Observation checks. We talked about this earlier. Basically, it's your investigation and your perception. It's anything you see beyond the obvious, if you really want to look. But it does talk about in here about basically saying, like, self-induced checks may not uncover anything worth describing, which the Doomsayer should explain. Making an observation check isn't just checking if they notice something, but if they consider it noteworthy. The character might see the arcane runes etched in the dungeon walls without understanding their importance, or mistakenly interpret distant cries for help as background noise. So, like, there's ways where you're just like, okay, well, I just do one. And you're just like, it's the same person that goes to your table and is like, all right, I rolled a 7 perception. I'm like, for what? What do you, like, you're not even telling me what you're doing. You're just rolling a dice at me.
Yeah. I've met those people.
Yeah. On a failed check, the Doomsayer can provide a description reflecting uncertainty, or to intentionally mislead the party, or even offer correct information in a seemingly unreliable way. See, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that. I guess when I'm like I've been trying to play more as like a referee where I just give the information. I don't like necessarily being a GM who will do this, like intentionally mislead the party because they perceive something in a different way. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that. I think I would just lay out what's going on, but I can see why in this specific, especially because it's not player facing roles. Grip checks. Characters make a grip check whenever they're exposed to a terrifying, mind-bending, or unfathomable event, monster, or environment. Make a will check to be shaken but remain level-headed, gaining 1 experience, otherwise losing 1 grip. Some grip checks are against the odds or of upper hand. So basically, a grip check is a will check, and it just takes away from your grip if you fail. Because what other stat would you have? It's a pool.
Yeah, very true.
Do you want to hit combat?
Yeah, combat. So combat's divided, like we said before, in 2 rounds. Rounds take 10 seconds. And each round, everyone takes a turn. And that is the order is determined by initiative, which, much like many other games, a creature only moves and acts on their turn. Initiative. So to determine a round's initiative order, each creature rolls a d3. Rolls a d3 their wit. Rolls a d3, and I assume it means add their wit. And any weapon, advancement, or adaptation modifiers. So
I think it's just missing a comma. I think it's each creature rolls a d3, comma, their wit, and I would say another comma, and any weapon, advancement, or modifiers. Like it's a list of things. That's how I read it as.
No, it rolls a d3 plus their wit and any weapon, advancement, or because all of those things add to your initiative.
Yeah, that's true. It has to be add because you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you're right, but we'll never know. Creatures act from highest to lowest initiative. In the tie, the higher wit acts first. For tied wit, crypt diggers act before monsters. When 2 crypt diggers tie, the player decides who goes first. When monsters tie, the doomsayer decides. Not everyone's initiative. Pardon me. Sorry. Note everyone's initiative, rolling and adding new arrivals as needed. If a creature changes their weapon, their initiative may change. During combat, the doomsayer may request recalculating initiative if the battle takes a sudden turn or the plane of the combat shifts. So please, instead of set pieces or set piece battles, best left buried combatants are more often ambushed or chance encounters. If a creature is surprised, unprepared for combat, they skip their turn. Nice and easy. Getting the drop on opponents is the easy way to make hard combat easy. Likewise, even the measliest foe are more threatening without time to react. So yeah, if you're surprised, you just skip a turn in combat, and if they're surprised, they skip a turn. Fantastic, nice and simple, very clean, no questions about it. Cool. Moving on to zones. Like time, combat space is more precisely defined. A combat area is called a zone, which represents the space traversable in 1 turn. It might be a large open circular space about 20 meters across, a heavily obstructed cramped space slowing movement, or a sheer cliff. The doomsayer should map out or describe each zone's detail, explaining any impediments, moving from one zone to another. A normal crypt digger can move to any adjacent zone during their turn. Faster creatures may move 2 zones. A creature can attack the same zone with a melee weapon. A creature can attack an adjacent zone with a short-range weapon. A creature can attack within 5 zones with a long-range weapon. Some zones are impassable, like the space above a crevasse, cave wall, or cliff. You cannot move through impassable zones without specific advancements or adaptations. One thing I noticed is they started using creature in this section, which is like a catch-all for either like PCs or monsters. But I don't know why when they brought it in, they kind of threw me off for a second the first time reading through it. But yeah. So combats you have zones, you have areas. And it's like essentially a what is in that zone and the distance away from one another it is. And that's kind of determine how combat goes. I don't know that I love how it was described here. Like, I like a lot of stuff about it, you know? It just seems very, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say? What are you thinking? What's on your brain?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, an example of play I think they might get to later with the zone. But it says a creature can attack with 5 zones with a long-ranged weapon. So you have to mark off like 5 zones wherever you're at. And at the bottom, though, it does say some zones are impassable, like the space above a crevasse, cave wall, or cliff. You cannot move through an impassable zone without specific advancements or adaptations. So, like, you're not necessarily always going to be on a flat surface and just make like 5 concentric circles.
Yes.
So it could be broken into like sections of it, which is neat. I mean, I hear what you're saying, where it could potentially be like described maybe a little bit better.
A creature can attack the same zone with a melee weapon. Well, what if the zone that you're in is fairly large and I guess they can move across a single zone in a single turn, so that doesn't really matter.
So really, anything in your zone is attackable is basically what it's saying. So like, if there's a monster in your zone, you don't need to worry about it being 40 feet away or whatever. Fair, you're in the same zone, it can attack. And I think in a little bit it talks about like escape and stuff like that, where like if you want to leave a zone, like there's always opportunity that you have to roll like an escape check, I think, which is interesting to get out of the zones. So I think it talked about zones a little bit more.
Very Final Fantasy.
I do like the concept of zones and like when you start combat being like, this is a zone A, zone B, zone C, whatever, like that.
Absolutely.
And then I like how it completely takes away like the necessary need for like a grid or anything, because you're just like, oh well, that monster is in the same zone as you, it can move to hit you, period. I think it simplifies it, but I think, like you said, I think it could be explained slightly easier, but I think once you start doing it, I think it would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and as we're like continues, gotta say, it does make sense. It's just something about the image of it was weird in my mind, but that's okay. Moving on to turns. We kind of went over turns before. Each turn, a Crypt Digger can move one zone and act. Doing any of the following: they can attack, they can rush, which is just going to pass through another additional zone. They can escape. See page 78. You can use an advancement or adaptation. Meaning advancement. Sorry. You can finish them. You can attempt to grapple. And if a Crypt Digger wants to try something not listed in normal rules, it may require an action. During combat, a character cannot use any items in their backpack, only those in their hands or on their belt. So they need to let you know what's on their belt, because it's going to become important. I don't know that I don't know that I would keep up with that if they were just like, I'm going to use this item that I have. Go for it. I don't care.
I don't. In the game that I'm making, I have a similar mechanic. It's basically the exact same mechanic, where you have what you can hold plus 2 items on you, and the rest is in your pack. But since I'm doing like a 2d6 mixed success, you can sack a turn to take something out of your pack. But you have to do an agility check, because there's always a consequence. So like, while you're doing that, a monster could attack you. But you can take it out of your pack. It just takes an entire turn for you to basically like sling your pack around, open it up, find what you want, pull the thing out.
That makes sense.
But again, necessary to do an agility check in a system where the only way creatures do things is when you fail.
That's right, because it's all the player-facing roles in your system.
It's all player-facing roles, yeah. But it's very similar, but I would allow players to pull stuff out of their pack if they want. It would just take time.
Yes. Cool. I mean, I'm good with that. I am on the other end of that, where like in a system like this, where the monsters move no matter what happens, like I'm not going to track what's on your belt. So if you tell me like, I'm going to go ahead and throw this thing at this guy, sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little loose. I think you got.
Yeah, bro, I'm not gripping, dude. So I'm loose.
Yeah. No, I think in a system like this, where there aren't player facing roles and the GM is still rolling, because if you still take a turn to pull the weapon out, that's a free turn that a monster gets against you. Yeah. So I think you could kind of meet in the middle with that and do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Either way, I mean, it all works for what works for your table.
Yeah, that's very true. Whatever works for your table, y'all. Rules don't matter. I mean, how many of us play that really famous game and never using the rules? Yeah.
Listen, half the people that play the big game have never read the goddamn rule book. So
there's so many rules. How would I spend all the time reading them? I know how it works basically. Okay, attacking. An attack's target must be in the weapon's range and visible. That seems real obvious. An observation check can be used locating a hidden or obscured target to attack. Like we said before, you're going to roll 3d6. If you tie or exceed the target's armor, by adding 2 dice of the 3, the third one becomes your damage as long as you've beat that enemy's armor. Otherwise, you miss and you deal no damage. That's how it works.
Yeah.
There is an example. Do you want to go over the example? This is usually I'm good for it, but these are so straightforward.
They are. But one thing I like about the fact that there are 3 examples is one is a regular hit, one is a crit, and one is a miss. So it's like they hit all of the potential aspects. So in the first one, Peter fires a crossbow at skeleton, armor 8. To attack, he rolls 3d6, a 5, a 3, and a 2, and adds the 5 and 2 together because he has +1 to his wit, which gets an 8, which gives you 3 damage. Boom. That's it.
Amazing.
In the second one, Thurin attacks an armored crypt thing with armor 9 with her war axe using Weapon Master for the upper hand. She rolls 4d6 because don't forget you have upper hand. You add a d6. 6, 4, 3, 1 discards the 1. Puts the 4 and 3 together because she's got +2 brawn to hit that 9, which leaves her 6 damage. And as we know, 6 damage, since it's max damage, you roll an injury, which is a long-term thing, right? And then the last one, long story short, they add it all up and they don't hit. So I like the 3 different examples here of all the 3 possibilities, which are basically hit, miss, and hit with a crit.
Yeah.
This does, though, not give you an option for critical misses, which I'm totally fine with. Because honestly, in the midst of a combat that's been going on for 45 minutes and they're bullet sponging some bullshit, when they roll a 1, I'm like, who cares? Keep going. Because if I break, if you throw your sword or I break your fucking bowstring, it's just more time I'm going to keep slogging through this BS. Not in this, but in,
Yeah, in other games.
Yeah. That has many dragons and fewer dungeons. So okay. So yeah. So when attack deals damage, the target loses vigor equal to the 3rd die, which is what we just said. The damage is potentially be modified by the weapon, another typo. An advancement or adaptation. We already talked about upper hand and against Yaj, you roll 46, take that, and you drop the highest or the lowest. If attack is trivial, it automatically hits. You roll 2d6 and inflict damage equal to the highest die. And an impossible hit has no effect. This is an interesting one here. Monsters and ganging up. So most of the time, monsters work like normal characters. However, identical monsters share initiative and act simultaneously even when taking different actions. When a monster attacks, decide its target. If 2+ identical monsters in the same zone attack a single target with the same weapon, advancement, or adaptation, roll a single attack with the upper hand for each monster beyond the first. This is called ganging up, but Crypt Diggers cannot do it. And remember, if 4+ of the same monster attack the same target, the attack may be trivial. As in, they will always hit you. So a horde of enemies may drag down even the boldest fighters, and Crypt Diggers who wish to fight multiple monsters should consider the Horde Killer advancement. So if you're fighting, long story short, if you're fighting multiples of the same type of creature, you just roll an upper hand attack for everyone above it, and if it's for the same type, it could be trivial, and they all just hit you or do whatever they want to do. So basically, if you're fighting a horde, don't get stuck in it. Escape, man. Here's the thing. Yeah, I didn't think this book was that long. I feel like it's dense. I feel like it's more dense than what it than what we think because it's like so art light.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's nice that I think you're right, but it's also nice because reading it still doesn't like. We've read books that like look dense as well. You know?
Yeah. Oh no, this doesn't look dense at all.
It doesn't look dense, but yeah, I think there's more to it than we thought. I mean, we're not going to go through the monster manual because we never do, and we're almost there. So,
well, there's not even really a monster manual. There's only it's basically more like how to build it.
Yeah, monster stats and stuff.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's denser than when I first picked it up because I've read it a bunch of times now. It's denser than when I first picked it up. But I don't think it's too much. I feel like every rule, I'm just like, yeah, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. It doesn't feel super crunchy at all. It still feels very clean. It just feels like it takes a lot of instances into account and really tries to wipe out those like the fringe. What's the word? Is it fringe? Is that the word I'm thinking for? When it's like the random kind of like doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, but just kind of fringe rulings that you need for a game. Yeah. And I think also another thing is like they've restated like several rules several times because they touch on at the beginning, somewhere in the middle, and then like playing the game and like again. They explain
stat checks like 4 times very thoroughly. And I appreciate reiterating when you're in that area. The only reason I say that, one, it's not hyperlinked table of contents. So if you're in a new area, I like that. Like you don't have to reference another area. If it's talking about something related to stat checks, when it reinforces, when it gives you stat checks again, so that the next thing that's about stat checks touches it. I don't mind that it's like kind of each section is kind of encapsulated, that you get it each time. I think it works well. So that you don't have to, like I said, bounce around the book to find all the information. Escape. Sometimes combat odds are poor and characters must flee. A crypt digger attempting to leave a zone containing a monster must make a wit check or either remain in the original zone or be attacked by one of the zone's monsters while leaving. The crypt digger may make the wit check trivial by forfeiting their action for the turn. So I don't think that means you can't rush out of a zone with a monster in it. You don't get 2 zones, but you can get out of the zone by not doing anything but running. Or you can try to do 2 things but have to make a wit check. And then there are status conditions. Most persist for 1 turn, but some last for 1 minute until the combat ends. There's not many. Blinded. All attacks made are against the odds, and sight-based observation checks are impossible. Deafened, sound-based observation checks are impossible. Restrained, you can take an action but cannot move during your turn. Stunned, you may move but cannot take an action. And immobilized, you can neither act or move. That should be a nor. But
very straightforward.
Yeah. We're getting close to the end. Grappling. Yeah, just that grappling.
Or the let's wrestle.
Yeah. A crypt digger can grapple a target in melee. The grappler makes a brawn check, restraining the target if they pass. So it's not opposed checks, is what I'm getting from this.
Yeah.
You just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
To escape, removing this condition, the target must use their action on a wit or brawn check to successfully break the grapple and regain their movement. Otherwise, the grapple continues. The target can take other actions, but the grappler must use their action every turn to continue restraining the target. I like that. It's clean. Yeah. It's without the opposed checks. I think it's the best way to do it. It's like, I successfully grabbed you. You can successfully just run away. We don't have to go against each other every single time. But if I want to keep a hold of you, I got to keep a hold of you each time, which I really enjoy. There's a cool piece of art here with what looks like a toothed, like ochre jelly almost, with like its hand covering the guy's mouth coming up behind him. I really like it. And like
it's like wrapped around his feet too.
Yeah. Well, and the raised arm with a dagger on it looks like it's kind of wrapped in this stuff too. So it literally like just like oozing around this guy, like one eye is still open and it's kind of like, fuck.
Yeah, this is horrifying.
I like it. Dying. You talked about this a little bit earlier. Long story short, if you hit 0 grip, you have a heart attack and you die. Your brain is broken. If a monster or NPC hits 0 vigor, they die. If you hit 0 vigor, you flip a coin. Now, is this different? I think this is backwards from earlier in the book.
It is. It was heads, they die.
Yeah. And then this time it says tails, they die. Grab us. grab a spare from character creation or make a new one. Work the Doomsayer. Long story short, yeah, heads you die. So, or either one you pick, I guess. I would say fucking call it, whatever.
I would say call it. I think call it is a fun thing. Call it, like, still 50-50, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So if you are just knocked unconscious after D6 hours, you regain consciousness, you have an injury and an affliction. You don't receive grip for taking any of the consequences.
They ain't gripping.
And no gripping. When waking from consciousness, you return with 1 vigor. That's it. That's all you got. You may spend up to 6 grip to grant your character additional vigor at a rate of 1-to-1. So you can sacrifice your brain health for your body health.
Yeah.
At a 1-to-1. That works. We talked about finish them on while in combat. Yeah, the enemy might finish the Gravedigger the Cryptdigger unless someone uses a heroic rescue to come save them.
Yeah, enemies might use their gripping to finish them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so. Exactly. And then, but Cryptdigger can use a heroic rescue to go into an unconscious character's zone in defense, preventing their death but skipping their next turn. And only Cryptdiggers in the same or adjacent zone can make heroic rescue. A heroic rescuer leaving a monster's zone must make a wit check to escape as usual. But you are not obligated most of the time. Some of the I think the protagonist is obligated to do a heroic rescue, and I think the cutthroat refuses unless it's like another thief. So it's interesting how they wrote that in there. Yeah,
it's really great characters. Character classes or archetypes.
Yeah. 2 sections left in this, and then we're going to consequences, which is where our injuries and afflictions are, and then a quick touch on monsters, and we're done. Do you want to hit resting and leveling up?
Resting. I scrolled up a little bit. There we go. Or I scrolled down a little bit. So resting. At the end of each adventuring day, you must rest. You're sleepy boys and girls and days. Depending on the rest and food's quality, you gain a different quantity of vigor and perhaps even some grip, as determined by the Doomsayer. Establishing a well-guarded camp with a good supply of foods, light, and warmth is vital when journeying into the crypt. If your entire Crypt Digger company returns to the city to regain grip, consider making new characters to continue adventuring while they recuperate, or skipping time until they return to crypt digging. If running multiple characters, think about what they might be doing while others adventure. Some might do routine surface camp guard duties. Others spend their hard-earned coin. I'm having a hard one in the city on the few nights rest. Some examples: poor rest, a few hours of sporadic sleep in a wet, damp cave without a fire, while monsters hunt you, might grant you no vigor because you have to rest. It's not like resting to get health back. You just have to at the end of the day. Mediocre rest, 6 hours rest with a single watch shift and a relatively dry cave, along with some rations, a small fire, might restore 3 vigor. Good rest, a proper night's sleep in a guarded base camp on the surface away from the crypt's terrors might grant 5 vigor. Excellent rest, sleeping in a tavern with multiple women and a warm mattress and a proper meal might grant 6 vigor and 1 grip.
A little bit more than 1 grip.
I just added the multiple women part. So if you're listening along, it doesn't actually say that. I was just thinking what I think excellent rest is. Cool. Yeah, and that's rest. So you have to rest, but you can rest and get nothing back, and I think that is fucking hilarious. I think that's great. It's like, you had to sleep in this, your backpack's your pillow, you're laying on the hard ground because you have to sleep, but leveling up. The Doomsayer awards experience for overcoming obstacles, surviving combats, passing grip checks, or retrieving treasure. For every 8 experience, like we said before, and even before that, accumulated, the Crypt Digger increases in power, gaining 1 point of vigor and grip, and taking a new advancement. Additional rules. Lots of RPGs come with very precise rules intended to deal with specific gameplay situation. Doomsayers are encouraged to improvise their own subsystems covering such things. Here are some examples of small subsystems. So we have darkness, which is going to affect observation checks, attacks, and some stat checks, depending on what kind of light source you have with you. I'm not going to like deep dive any of these. Drowning and suffocating deals with losing vigor and grip over time, like every round until they die. Falling, losing vigor for every 5 feet they fall. I can read that one because it's real short. Food and drink. Each day, essentially losing grip and vigor over multiple days as you go without rations. Overland travel, swimming, climbing, and crawling. These are all really great little subsystems that you can read here, or you could just make up your own, which I do all the time. Ryan and I are both hitting the height of our sleepiness, Ryan's yawning, I'm yawning.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna take a nap after this. I'm gonna mow the lawn. So,
dude, I'm gonna pass out so hard. I got work tonight. Cool, really fucked up looking monster thing laying over the corpse. This is
maybe the best piece of art in the book, actually.
Yeah, this is pretty dope.
What the fuck is this? It's horrifying.
It is horrifying. It's just, I don't know. And then there's a body underneath it. Next is the consequences. A really cool piece of art in the background of this with this guy who literally looks like he's lost his fucking mind, kind of holding his head and crouching. And then, yeah, so hitting the consequences, we're not gonna, it explains grip again. We're not gonna go over it again. And its use and stuff. So there's consequences. So grip does not regenerate over time, nor is it recovered by long rests. Occasional trips back to society may renew grip, but usually once it is spent, it is gone. So if you start with 10, over the course of your entire adventure, occasionally maybe getting 1 or 2 back every now and then, but that's all you got.
That's brutal.
I mean, you get 1 every time you advance. Right. But like, if you just spend each time, you're fucked. Like, basically, long story short, like your brain like is less. So stressed. It's so stressed. Yeah. To slow losing grip, characters may develop consequences. Results of unfortunate events in the grip. Consequences are divided into injuries, physical wounds, and afflictions, which are mental illnesses. You can develop an affliction at any point outside combat. Injuries, however, happen when narratively justified, such as after a failed check. So this makes players ask, should I push my character nearly to death, accepting consequences as late as possible, or stockpile them early to ensure survival? Should I burn through grip or conserve it? Lots of questions on how you should do that. So role-playing characters who develop drawbacks from crypt digging is great fun. Knowing why your veteran is an alcoholic makes pretending easier. Remember, when your cultists lost their hand, only makes victories in spite of it deeper. So I like this, but what is the mechanic for, I'm sure we'll get to it. So injuries. Crypt diggers can take an injury at any time, providing narrative justification, such as a failed stat check or severe combat damage. Voluntary injuries reset your grip to 5. Yeah. Well, but I said such as.
I know. I was just laughing because it is such as, but
yeah. Crypt diggers also suffer an injury upon taking 6 damage from a single die, or some other stuff. Blah blah. I do like this really cool injury table. Do you want to roll me a D3 and a D6?
I would fucking love to roll a D3 and a D6. I got a 3 and a 6. No effect, maybe.
No effect, yeah. The thing about this injury table though is that it's basically 1 column for brawn, 1 column for wit, 1 column for will.
I got 2 and 3.
Yeah, 2 and a 3 means you -1 wit as an injury. You got dumb, son. You got knocked in the dome. Or wit is also agility and everything too. So maybe you got like you pulled an Achilles or something.
I like the one right above it, 2/2. Lose a foot / leg moving to a zone takes 2 rounds. Tasks requiring bipedalism are against the odds or impossible. It's like, yeah,
Like
you lost that shit, bro. You're a little hobbly boy now.
Well, 1 across the top on all of these, if you roll 1-1 or 2-1 or 3-1, is you're dead. You're just dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are monster options too. Monster loses 2d6 vigor instead. And then there's afflictions, which I really, really like. There's 18 of them. Voluntarily taking an affliction resets grip to 10. So this is really encouraging you to take an affliction and role play that affliction.
Did you ever play Darkest Dungeon?
I did, yeah.
This is very, very Darkest Dungeon. You know, like you take these afflictions, you're going a little crazy from being down in this crypt, and like it very much reminds you of that. You know? Yeah,
absolutely, for sure. Voluntarily. Oh, I already said that. There are 3 affliction types: character flaws, growing afflictions, and special afflictions. Do you wanna roll me a D18 or something?
2.
Riddle Mind. I think there's explanations to some of these down at the bottom. There's Love of the Dirt, which is a growing affliction, which is interesting. So to explain those types, character flaw relies on delusions and social role-playing. If a player fails to role-play a character flaw properly, like hoard lust, afflicted crypt digger giving money to beggars, the doomsayer should warn them before deducting grip points for unchanged behavior. A character flaw is a manifestation of psychological trauma, not a cheap and easy means of recovering grip. I love that. If you really roll a character, basically it says like it's just like people that play, like they put their dump stat in int or whatever for their barbarian, but then solve every puzzle. You know,
like, no, you're a dumbass. Like, it's okay, play a dumbass. You know,
play a dumbass. You know, exactly. So this is basically saying that, like, if someone takes an affliction just to get their grip back to 10, but then doesn't play the affliction that they got, start taking grip away, which I think is great. Yeah, warn them, but take it. A growing affliction.
People, you fucking cannibal.
seriously, there was a body right fucking there, and you just walked right by. Grab Snickers. Growing afflictions usually involve will checks to avoid behaviors. When first developed, associated will checks are with the upper hand. If the growing affliction is taken a second time, will checks are taken normally. A third time, will checks are taken against the odds, and a fourth time, they become impossible. A crypt digger, this psychological damage should probably be retired.
Yeah. What I hear is I'm still going to go, and this is going to be a fucking crazy person that we all have to deal with.
Every wit check just fails instantly. Growing afflictions often have triggers. For example, Silver Fingers entails compulsive theft and is triggered whenever there's something easily stolen. The Doomsayer or the player may suggest a trigger, as can other players, but don't expect to keep your friends for long if you're regularly pointing out their character's afflictions. Special afflictions have mechanical effects but do not revolve around will checks. Characters cannot develop the same special affliction more than once. If you roll a special affliction you already have, you re-roll. So here is a breakdown of all of the ones. You said you were brittle-minded?
I was brittle-minded.
So your brittle-mindedness, you are rocked and half broken by repeated exposure to horrors. All future grip checks are against the odds. That sucks.
Yeah, it does suck.
I got 3, which would be debilitating dread. It's a growing affliction. The crypt digger develops intense fear of an environment, monster type, or foe. When triggered, pass a will check or spend 1 grip, or all actions, save running and hiding from the trigger, are against the odds. Pretty dope. Cool. I shall be clean. The crypt digger develops an erotic hatred for dirt, filth, slime, blood, and the crypt's other unclean elements. You fucked, son. If sleeping without somehow bathing or cleansing themselves, they must pass a will check to regenerate any vigor or grip. That's great. And there's 18 of them, and they're great.
There's one that I want to read one now on 93. The Glorious Blaze. Crypt digger develops a love for the thrill of arson. This is a growing affliction. Triggered by a good opportunity, either pass a will check or spend 1 grip, or else attempt to set it on fire. Sleeping near silky, silky, luscious embers of fire restores 1 additional vigor. Cool. So you sleep next to fire, you get vigor back, but it's a growing affliction. So it continues to become harder and harder not to light things on fire, and that's amazing.
It is amazing. And we'll touch on monsters real quick, and then we'll wrap up. Again, more of the story, and another cool piece of background art in the back with a massive fucking monster staring down some of the party members here. Monsters are everything in the crypt. Describe them with grandeur and flourish. Don't just be like, here's 5 skeletons. Really, really get into the story, and even ask the players what you want to call them. Just because you describe them as skeletons doesn't mean the players are going to call them that. So let them build the narrative. I really do like that. It says, instead of calling them skeletons, what if they call them tomb dwellers or shamblers or something like that, which is really neat. So monster stats. Basically, when you make a monster, think of something creepy. Assign +1 0 -1 array, or +2 +1 0 if you want it to be more difficult. So assign stats like a character. Choose a monster adaptation, or for humanoid monsters, pick an advancement. Provide vigor and grit. Minions have less, like 5, but powerful foes have much more. Give it an armor between 6 and 11. 8 is normal, so 6 is low armor, 11 is high armor. And then you can go through the adaptations. Some of these that are really cool, I like Blood Scent. The monster has the upper hand on observation checks to detect targets with less than half their maximum vigor. So if you're at half health and trying to run, this thing is going to hunt you down.
It distracts you. Wow, brutal.
Yeah. I like that some of them do give you though like a plus and a minus. Well, kind of. So there's Hex Addled. This monster is against the odds on stat checks resisting magical effects, and magical attacks have against the monster have the upper hand. But Hex Proof is the opposite. The monster has the upper hand on stat checks, and resisting magical effects, and magical attacks against the monster are against the odds. And then there's just more of the same. Shadowclad, Soul Feast, Rampage, Undead, Violent End. And that is the end of the book. And if you... No, that's it. That's the book.
That's the book.
So it's good. It's good. So we are going to jump into our review of Vessel Buried, and then we'll be wrapping up. So a quick explainer again. We give 10 points each to 5 different, up to 10 points each to 5 different, what do I call this? Stats?
Things,
sure. So the first is art and style. It is the quantity and quality of the art in the book, and the consistency of the style kind of throughout the book, of the art generally, and the artistry of the layout. Layout and function is about the readability of the book, whether it's in the physical or digital. That's like hyperlinks, ribbons in the book, stuff like that. Rule set and crunch is if it's a unique rule set, is it good? And if it's an adapted rule set, is it adapted well? Crunch is, does it feel like there's, do the amount of rules feel like it fits what the game is trying to do? Or is it way too many rules? Originality is a pretty broad one. It's originality in lore, mechanics, art, even, like everything. And value is bang for your buck. Like, how much do you get for the cost of what you spent, including like free adventures or access to third-party content or things like that. So starting with art and style, what are your thoughts?
It's gonna strike pretty low for me. There's just not a lot of art in it. There's not a lot of style in it. And I think even like the chapter headers that have like that art behind that big gray piece, it just doesn't do a lot for me. I think that this is a 5 for art for me. I think it's very much the base level of art. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's the base.
I'm trying to think of, I think Lancer is the other game that got a 5 for art because we really loved the art in it. There just wasn't a whole lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is not as good as Lancer's art. So
No, but I do still think that there's more art in this than Lancer did for the number of pages. Because in Lancer, I mean, it was
for the number of pages. No question. Lancer is a fucking million pages in it. So
yeah, and there'd be like 10, 20 pages in a row of like double columned just no art. And I feel like, again, with the headers in this and with there's not a ton of big wide open spaces. I'm good with a 5 on this. Yeah. I do think that it's pretty much, again, 5 is just standard. 5 is average standard. Very it doesn't mean it's bad. Yeah. It's just standard. Opened up the wrong thing here. Score numbers. So 5 for art. Layout and function. So layout wise, the pages are incredibly readable.
Yeah, definitely.
And function wise, it felt like when you're reading through it the first time, it does feel like there's a little redundancy in like here's how vigor works again, here's how grip works again. But I do think that if what you're, even in the last thing we said, we're like, here's grip again, but then it explains the bonus parts of grip, which are the afflictions and things like that. I actually really like it if it's not me reading beginning to end. If I just go to the page where I'm like, okay, how do afflictions and injuries work again? And then it gives me grip in the beginning so I know again. I don't feel like it just does it for no reason. I feel like every section, if there's another thing that the stat check might be used for, it explains stat check again. I actually like that. I think it's a bonus.
I don't know that I love that. I think that there is a way to do it to be a little bit more like a halfway between the way they do it and like only mentioning it once. Stat checks are mentioned too many times. Like, you don't mention stat checks that many times. That one I get. Like mentioning grip later on, like, oh yeah, and this is the other things that add the grip. I totally get that. I'm not massively a fan of the layout and function of this book. I mean, it's got no hyperlinks. It's got no chapters. It has like a slew of typos. I mean, like a astonishing amount of typos.
Yeah, I would say, again, I'm gonna devil's advocate the other side of the repeating stuff again, just because, again, if we didn't read it straight through, and you just went to like section 4, and you won't have, and you were like, okay, here's some extra rules for stat checks. I don't have to go to chapter 1 to find it again. I think it's done a lot, but I don't think there's ever a time where it's just like randomly here's stat checks. It's just like, here's more things to do and here's the basic rules.
I'm the devil's advocate, your devil's advocate, and say that if I've read this book all the way through and I'm going back to look for one specific rule, I do not need to look back through all of the rules repeated. Well,
the other thing too is if there were hyperlinks and at least in the PDF form, if there were hyperlinks and bookmarks, you'd be able to click back and forth pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think readability, it's good. Like each page is incredibly readable, but it's lacking pretty much everything else, and the typos really
drag it down. It was hard to read aloud sometimes because you were like, oh, or not.
I can't. We have not read another book that had this many. Every now we'll find like one. Maybe 2.
Yes. But the other thing is that usually when we find those, you look at the physical book and it's not in the physical book. These are in the physical book.
Yeah. Well, it's not even just in the physical book. This is like a new edition.
Yeah.
Of the physical book, and it's still the same one. I mean, what are you thinking?
That knocks it down quite a bit for me. Like I would not pass this above a 5.
Yeah. I mean, I probably agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the fact that it's so readable gets it to a 5, because if it was less readable, it'd be a 4, because the typos are like that many typos is a big deal. You know?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And again, like as far as it's a big book, well, at least the one that I read. I mean, right. I have the deeper version. So it's a whole thing altogether. A ribbon would be super helpful in a book that big.
Yeah. A ribbon, man. Just like, give me a bookmark.
But in the PDF, the lack of hyperlinks, bookmarks, inline hyperlinks, like any way to navigate the PDF any easier is it's a huge loss. It's been a while since we actually found one that had 0 hyperlinks whatsoever.
Yeah. So
yeah. And again, I think this is a much older. When did the original book get published? Because I know it was way before I know it was way before Orbital Blues.
Let's see. It wasn't that far before Orbital Blues.
I don't see like a first published.
I'm on the Kickstarter. It was not that long before Orbital Blues.
When was the Kickstarter?
Hold on. It's. I'm trying to go back to the first update. 2020.
Okay, I mean, so yeah, it's a little while ago.
September 2020, so almost 2021. That's not that far. That's not that far back. Like,
no, I mean, we're technologically, yeah. Okay, so rule set and crunch.
Great rule set, amazing rule set.
We
just dogged on the art and the layout and function, but the rule set's fantastic.
It's so good.
Yeah,
it's really, really good. I mean, we gave Orbital Blues an 8. It's at least an 8, and I think that. I mean, and I loved Orbital Blues, and I thought the rules were great and super well done for Orbital Blues. But I think the number of, I mean, it would be hard to push this to a 9. But I think the afflictions are great, and I think the advancements are fantastic. I mean,
it's almost
so
the same
well
as Orbital
done.
Blues because the stuff that you do level up. I don't know. Actually, I kind of like Orbital Blues' rules better. Because the way that you level up in Orbital Blues is by dealing with your deep-seated trauma, which is appropriate for that game. This is a little bit more of a mechanical game feel, but I'd still say it was an 8. You know, I don't think I like it more in Orbital Blues. I think I like Orbital Blues more, but I still think they're both 8s, you know? Just one's an 8, one's an 8.5.
Yeah, I really, and I am the exact opposite. Like, for me, Orbital Blues would be the 8, and this would be the 8.5. So I like a little bit of the crunch bit. But when I look at the other games that are potentially, even if we were thinking about doing a 9, we're talking about Death in Space, 12 Years and Kingdoms, and Necronautilus.
No, Death in Space, like, it's not getting up there.
No. Yeah. Or Necronautilus, again, like, yeah. So this is a solid 8. Like, solid basically, 8. We've never given a 10. So this is basically a 9, which is, like, behind... Out of all the games we've done, did you know last week was our 25th episode? We didn't even say or do anything.
What? So is there 26th episode?
26th episode.
Holy shit! I mean, I missed the first 4, but that's 20 episodes for me, baby.
It's crazy. But this is the same rule set score as Merkborg, Mothership. Obviously, Orbital Blues, Nova, Cyborg. So rules-wise, this is almost as good as it gets. There's only, I think, 3 games that we've given a 9 to. Originality. So, again, this came out before Orbital Blues. So rule set-wise, I really love the originality of the rule set. I think there's a lot of really... It's so clean and smart. It reminds me, the first time I read Maze Rats, my mind was just like, oh my God. This is so clean and smart. And this reminds me of like just a slightly more, I don't want to say the word crunchy, but like more in-depth version of Maze Rats with the way that again, it's the same mechanics as Orbital Blues, but the 3d6 with the third one being damage, the 3 stats that have very broad kind of interpretations. I love it. So rules-wise, as far as originality goes, I think it's great. And the 2d6 with just the 9+, but you really roll like the 3d6 for the attacks. Like, it's such a good way. We've read a lot of 2d6s and I don't see another one done that way. So as far as the rule set goes, I think it's really original. As far as the setting goes, within this book, there's not a whole lot. Within some of the other books, there really is. So it's hard to judge on that. Yeah. And then...
But we can judge on what's in there, which is that you're a dungeoneer and crypt digger. You know, like even that's kind of cool and unique in and of itself. You know. Yep.
And then again, we're looking at like it's an we'll call it a quote unquote NSR. It's an OSR dungeon delver.
Yeah.
But done in a super good way.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on this?
Powers are fun. There's a like very original like power spread that like you've heard the abilities before, but the way they use them are fun and a little bit different.
Super
I mean,
smart.
I would say that this is a good solid 7 of originality. You know, I think if it would delve more into the setting or into other stuff, there would be higher, but there's just not a lot here for that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Rune Cairn got an 8, but it dug deep into the Norse setting.
Yeah.
Cyborg got a 9, but it was like
it's a setting book, so
it's a setting book. Overarms got an 8. Death in Space for originality got a 7, but that's because it's space. Yeah. Like space, you know, blue collar space has been there before. So yeah, I think a solid 7 is good for the originality here. Value wise,
so
you didn't happen to go to Exalted already.
I have it pulled up. On Exalted, the Crypt Digger's Guide to Survival plus PDF is $20.
Ooh,
that's very good. If you get it on drive-through, whoops, I clicked on a different game in drive-through because I had ADHD. Right now it's on sale on drive-through PDF only for $10. Normally it's $13.50, which is still really good. You know.
So this book that's got all 3 books is $53.
That's still pretty good.
I mean, it's a 300-page book.
It's a fucking huge book for that. And that's pretty good.
326-page book, and you get the PDF for it. And we talked about like availability of more content. We've talked about the availability of more content. I mean, there's a shitload.
And those on Drive-Thru RPG, if you don't care about getting the physical and you want to save some money, like those are $12 a pop.
Easy peasy.
Which you could get the Crypt Digger's Guide for whatever $20 if you want the physical copy, or $10 if you don't, and then you and your buddies can split buying a $12 adventure each of you or whatever. And I mean, it's pretty low cost. I would say this is a good what has an 8 in value right
now? Death in Space is an 8 in value. But that was, I mean, the Death in Space book was it's like a special edition with ribbons and foiling and all sorts of stuff. But what else got? Gunslinger got a 7 on value. Arc has an 8, but that has like a ton of extra, like a Discord bot and all sorts of stuff. Into the Odd got a 7.
Yeah, Into the Odd is very similar, right? Because the book's very fairly affordable, and there's a lot of stuff that you can Mark of the Odd adventures you can buy for $15 here and there.
I guess, but Mark of the Odd is just people's third-party content versus this, which is a ton of their own content.
So we're back to an 8.
I would be generous on this and give it a solid 8 because it's got a lot of really, and I've read all the content. It's really good content.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. So.
So what do we got here? We got 5 plus 5 plus 8 plus 7 plus 8. A 33.
33. Yeah, the art style and the layout and function really knocked it down quite a few points.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the art, but it's just very sparse on the art, and it's very it's just black, white. Some of the pieces are very, it's just sparse. And again, we're arty boys, but the layout and function one is the one that's the most disappointing to me. That could be an easy 8 plus with some hyperlinks and some bookmarks and just another editing pass on it. Easy 8, because I think layout wise, again, readability, great. I think the pages are super clean. It's exactly what we want to look for in pages. It doesn't hurt the eyes. It's super readable on each page. It's not convoluted or overdone. But yeah, the complete lack of any type of navigation in the PDF.
Yeah, I mean, and also frankly, if the typos were in the PDF and you had pulled up the book and there's no typos in here, we'd bump it up because.
Yeah, well, that's what with Viking Death Squad. There were a couple of errors in there, but not a single one made it in the book. But the fact that this made it not just from the first book, but then into the compiled book too, without another editing pass, is just disappointing. Overall, I cannot fucking wait to play this game. I absolutely love it. It's basically Orbital Blues if you like dark, gory dungeon shit. Which, listen, who you talking to?
It's you.
Who you talking to here? That's me. That's exactly what I like.
Cool.
So yeah, that is Best Stuff Buried. Super. I will 100% be playing this game on stream once I get settled in my new spot. It's going to be right near the top of the list of a bunch of short games I'm going to run.
Afflicted fucking character. I'm going to choose the Kabbalist and already take an affliction, and then I'm going to choose the fucking Pact and then take another affliction. My guy's going to be half dead with superpowers. It's going to be great.
Half dead with superpowers is a perfect fucking character for this. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is Best Stuff Buried. Do us a solid out there. Follow us on our socials. We are the Adventure Archive, all one thing on YouTube. That's the one that if the only one you follow is that one, sub to our YouTube. A lot of great content on there. Yeah. Death in Space is still going, running.
Come on, you know.
Yeah. And a weekly_scroll on Twitter if you want to follow along. We always announce when we're going live and everything like that. And our Instagram is actually probably as far as what I do, the most. I do like 6 posts a week. I try to keep up with them, but I will announce every week.
You know?
Yeah, I will announce every week the game that we're going to do next, and have a reel for it and everything. And that's the.weekly.scroll. So do us a solid, follow those, especially sub to our YouTube. And that is our episode for today. We will let you know.
Weekly Scroll episode 26.
We'll let you know Wednesday, Thursday, whenever I get around to it, and whenever me and Hunter talk about it, what our next game is going to be. Hunter, you have a wonderful day. Have fun mowing the grass. I'm going to bed.
You too. Have a great sleep. I hope you dream of conquering your enemies and drinking their blood.
I always do. Have a good one, buddy. Bye.
Bye.